Hey, welcome back, everybody, and thanks for joining us for another episode of BCS Community Connections. Today on the podcast, we have none other than Mr. Dallas Shipp. Appreciate you coming in today, Dallas.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So Dallas is your current business, and what you're running here in town is six-shooter marketing. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But I want to give an opportunity for you to kind of talk about your background a little bit, tell everybody about where you're from, where you grew up at, what brought you here to Bryan College Station area, and then we'll kind of run into the history of six-shooter marketing and some things you've done in the past. So
yeah, sure.
Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
So I was born and raised in the Houston area. Grew up in Baytown most of that time from first grade on, and then went to Baytown Sterling. And always dreamed of coming to Texas A&M. Had a cousin that brainwashed me, starting at about the age of 9.
How it works, right? I mean, all these niggas, they get brainwashed at an early age, right?
Yeah, my dad's family is filled with a bunch of T-shirt Longhorn fans, and they had one that went to Texas. But anyways, when I was born, there's pictures of me as a baby in that putrid burnt orange stuff. But anyway,
so there are pictures that exist of this somewhere.
I've destroyed most of them.
Okay.
There could be some out there. But yeah, so my cousin, at the same time in third grade, my favorite teacher of all time, Miss Metcalf, she was an Aggie, and she was like fresh out of college. She was probably out of college for maybe 5 years.
Yeah.
And I had a terrible second grade teacher, so I loved her. And at the same time, my cousin was a freshman at A&M. And so I remember she would send me letters. I remember one specifically. She always sent me postcards or letters or whatever. And every Christmas there'd be an A&M gift bag or A&M wrapping paper. That was my gift.
This is how it starts.
This is how it started. Yeah.
I mean, you gotta send it in and really load the chute with this stuff. So one year, she sent me a postcard that she had gone to a Garth Brooks concert at G. Raleigh White, and she had sat on the front row. And so in my 8-year-old mind, I was like, so if you go to Texas A&M, you can go sit on the front row for a Garth Brooks concert, right? That's how this all started. That's how you make the connection there.
And so I came up here when she graduated in 91, loved it. She used to be a tour guide at A&M, and so she gave us a tour. Later that day, I gave the tour to people that weren't there for the other tour. And it was funny, when I got to A&M, I became a tour guide. And so I really wish I hope one day I can find a picture of me giving that tour when I was 9 or whatever, 10. And but anyway, so that's how that started. Yeah. And I always give her a hard time, especially after like really tough losses in Aggie football. Man, if it wasn't for you, I would have like a 2005 national championship shirt. And, I like to rib Amy a little bit. But no, I fell in love with the place. It was the only school I applied to. So I got here in 99, fall of 99. So I was a freshman the year the bonfire fell. And really been here ever since. I left for a short stint to go to Houston for an opportunity that was a good opportunity, but just I did not like living in Houston. And I lived in Baytown, so I thought I had lived in Houston. That's not living in Houston.
I lived in Galveston.
Right? Yeah, so that's not living in Houston.
Yeah.
And so I remember every day, I live like 7 miles from work, and it would take me 45 minutes to get home on a good day, and I was just pissed at the world.
Yeah, so I'm from San Antonio, so, I'd go from Galveston up to Houston, then cut across. And, literally when I hit I-10, it's like an hour and a half on I-10 just to get out of town.
Because that was probably back before that was the 45 lanes wide or whatever.
Yeah, it was a disaster.
It was brutal. So, so I came back up here and I've been here ever since.
Awesome. So, your degree?
I was a journalism major. So when I graduated from college, I actually, I was going to be a sports writer. I was going to be on ESPN or whatever. I discovered very quickly that, if you ever want to find a woman that wants to marry you, you need to make more money than you make as a sports writer. But it actually really prepared me for what I do now, because over the past, 10 years especially, if you don't have the ability to tell a story,
right,
that's really big in marketing.
Yeah. And
that prepared me really well.
And not just that, it's also, you got your storyline that you create in that journalism side, but it's also that connection that you need to make to who it is that you're interviewing and being able to carry that conversation to get that story put together. So
absolutely. So fresh out of college, I was telling this story just the other day. I didn't have a job, and my buddy True Brown and me were we were just young and naive enough to think that this was a good idea and not be scared to go do it.
Yeah.
But we pitched an idea to the 12th Man Foundation to start a student magazine. This was about 3 or 4 years before Facebook really took off and social media changed everything. Everything would have been totally different 5 years later. But we went in and said, hey, you should hire us 2 22-year-old kids to come in and launch this, $500,000 deal,
Why not, right?
And so they're like, oh man, we love the idea, but we don't have like 350 or whatever, 350,000, whatever it was that was the budget. And I was like, without missing a beat, I was like, well, what if we sell advertising to cover it? And they're like, well, we'll give you 1 year to try it out. All right, that's all I wanted, And so we didn't get paid hardly anything, but we had keys to Kyle Field.
It's a nonprofit organization there.
Yeah, we had keys to Kyle Field, and we were 22 years old, and we thought we thought we ran College Station.
I was going to say, that's enough a paycheck right there, man.
Yeah, it was a good time.
You just carry the cross with you, your nonprofit organization, but you're the big man on campus at that point, too.
Yeah, and I guess I could tell these stories now. I mean, they're going to fire me, but yeah,
That's right.
So some nights, every once in a while, we'd go to the Chicken or whatever, and we'd hey, let's go play some football. And we'd go to Kyle Field and kick field goals at 2 a.m. I remember one night I bombed a 40-yard field goal with my steel toe boots on.
Listen, there's something to be said about who you know in town,
dude.
Right?
So it was a good time.
Yeah,
and all our friends loved us. Oh, let's go play football on Kyle Field.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah,
right?
It's a good time.
Yeah, you get an opportunity to go out to one of the most respected areas here in town and desecrate it with terrible field goal opportunities. So
when I kicked that 40-yarder, you'd have thought we just won the national championship. I circled the field, and
I'm sure you guys were well hydrated and all that stuff when you went out there.
Well, of course,
and did all this stuff. So we want to make this
proper liquids are mandated for Kyle Field. The last thing you need is a cramp.
That's correct. You really, I just envision that you probably set the precedence for beer being sold at Kyle Field. They just didn't want to follow your lead that early. You were way ahead of your time.
We weren't that brazen. We weren't that bold. No, I don't ever remember taking any booze. It was strictly a, hey, we're not ready to go to bed yet. Let's go play some football.
The story of many a student's life out of A&M. I'm sure.
Sorry, Miles.
They just can't put it on Kyle Field. It's over in front of a dorm or over in front of a house that they've all partied at or something.
Yeah,
so
that was
street ball and everything. So
it's a good time.
So you're here in town. You go to Houston. You come back, and when you came back, what were you doing when you came back?
So when I came back, I was still doing the sports writing gig. Okay. Worked for Scout.com, which is, I don't think they're around anymore, but it was kind of a competitor to the monster that is Texags now.
Yeah.
And so I covered the Aggies, did a little covering of recruiting, which I hate, so that was not fun, but I did it. I've just never been a fan of covering 16, 17-year-old kids and their daily decision making.
Yeah.
Or
their parents.
Or their latchers on, right? Like the non-parents that are trying to get a paycheck or get a job as an assistant coach or something.
Listen, I don't follow any of the recruiting stuff unless it comes out of my high school, but I do want to give a shout out to Lee Al because he's from Judson and that's where I graduated from. And so, my connections there, I get to hear all the stuff with his decision making and his mom and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just glad he showed up here.
I'm glad he's coming back. Did he announce he's coming back too? Him and Peavy are both coming back?
Yeah, man. I mean, he is a monster. He's a monster in high school, and he's transitioned that into the field as well too. So
I like seeing good kids make the right decisions.
Yeah.
Like you could have gone out and maybe gotten drafted in a late draft pick. Come back and give yourself a shot at some real money in the first 2 or 3 rounds and leave a legacy here at A&M. Yeah. I think we've got a chance to do some special stuff next year.
Yeah, listen, the background on him was he wasn't coming to A&M.
Really?
He was going to Texas, and he took multiple trips up there. And they did everything they could, but it was the spring game when he came down that laid all that foundation for us. So, it was good to see that when he came down, the tradition, the insight for being able to be a part of something special and seeing that. People who graduate from A&M, that they're a part of that culture. I mean, it's something that can't be replicated on other college campuses. And it's very noticeable when you interact with all of those people that are there. So,
well, and I mean, I've been to 50 plus universities.
Yeah.
And there's some special places out there.
Sure.
But when you see the Aggie network at play, I mean, the opportunities that I've gotten just because, I went to Texas A&M, I continued to network with former students after.
Absolutely.
I can't tell you, and I've never had a job in my life post-grad that didn't have an A&M connection.
Yeah. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And I mean, it really is Aggies helping Aggies. I mean, it's
even when Aggieland Outfitters where I was at, right? I met Fadi when I was at the 12th Man Foundation. I sold him advertising.
Yeah.
Always maintained that relationship.
Yep.
And 10 years later, I ended up working for him,
Yeah. Yeah. You just never know where that's going to materialize somewhere. So.
Rusty Burson gave me my first gig out of college. I mean, he hired me as an intern when I was at the battalion as a student.
Yep.
That's how I met everyone at 12th Man Foundation, to take them the idea.
Yeah.
The people I met at 12th Man Foundation, I had an opportunity with an insurance agency. I mean, the Aggie network is real.
No, and it's all connected. And there's so many backside connections that you don't even see, even from the front side looking in, that maybe this guy doesn't have an opportunity for you, but he knows 3 other guys who may,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's constantly it's that inside stepping of people getting an opportunity to step out and help fellow Aggies. So,
100%.
yeah, I mean, that's huge. So we won't walk through all of the stuff that you've done, but we'll walk into what you're currently doing. So currently right now you're running 6-shooter marketing.
Yep.
Tell me how that came to be.
So like I said, I started off as a sports writer.
Yep.
And had an opportunity to go into the insurance world. Well, Warren Barhorst, who's a former 12th Man kickoff team guy, he gave me an opportunity with an insurance agency, and that was the turning point for me. I didn't really enjoy the insurance world,
right?
But I learned so much about business from working with Warren. I learned so much about, why you have to write down your goals, why you have to put everything into a picture in your head.
Right.
It's not just going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Right. You've got to have a plan. And that really changed things for me as far as how I looked at business. And it was the first really successful business person that I worked with directly. So I was just like a sponge when I was with Warren. But when I got out of the insurance agency, I had people say, how in the hell did you get 5,000 people to like an insurance Facebook page? And I was like, well, I didn't really talk about insurance. I told stories.
Right.
And so people started paying me to help them with their Facebook page. This was when Facebook pages were still, the organic Facebook page was really valuable, right? Yeah, before they went public and everything. I mean, now you have to pay to play, sure. Right? I mean, by and large, there are some exceptions, but yeah. So that's how I started doing it. It was an accident, and then worked at AT&T for a while I was figuring out how to make that happen. Yeah. And one of the first clients I had was Fadi at Aggieland Outfitters. And I was there for about 6 weeks as a consultant. And he was like, hey, I want you to work for me full time. I was like, yeah, that's fine. But I'm building this up.
Specifically marketing.
To be their director of marketing.
Yep.
Right? They had been through several marketing directors in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Just they weren't getting a lot of traction. And so he loved what we were doing in the meetings and the plans we were making. And I said, yeah, sure, but I want my flexibility to be able to do this, which I didn't really have at my full-time job at AT&T.
Right.
And so he said, yeah, no problem. I was like, okay, great. This will be awesome. Well, 2012 was my first year full-time at Aggieland Outfitters. And it was a big year for Texas A&M merchandising, as you might imagine. And so didn't get to do it a whole lot that year. But man, you talk about some opportunities. The 2012 football season really gave me a chance to do some things that kind of gave me a name around town, right. As well, as far as like man, the events we put together, like the RV road trip we did. I mean, before Aggieland Outfitters partnered with the Association of Former Students, I mean, those road game tailgates would have 50, 100 people maybe.
Right.
And 2016 was the last year we did it, and I think our smallest one had 1,800 at Mississippi State. We did the one at Houston that, our estimate was 5,500, but I had no idea. I mean, we ran out of beer in like 40 minutes. It was crazy. So doing that kind of stuff. And then in 2016, I had enough clients, I had enough momentum that I decided to, said, Fadi, I appreciate everything. I'm happy to help you still on a contract basis. But this is what I'm really passionate about. I'm very, very passionate about helping businesses like kick some ass. Yeah. Right. That's what I love to do. And
so let me back up a second. I don't want to lose this thought.
Yeah.
So that passion for marketing was spurred though back at the insurance agency.
Yeah, that's where I discovered that marketing was my gig.
Yeah, and then so it rolls in. You go to Fadi, you take kind of what you've learned here, roll that up into a bigger environment, obviously, with a much bigger following. And now all of a sudden you're sitting there looking at this going, okay, I'm pigeonholed right here? Like I'm only going to get so far if I'm here.
Right.
But if I can step this out, my influence also can stretch and expand as well.
100%. Yeah. I mean, and it was one of those things where like I learned a lot with Warren, and then I learned even more having full reins of all the toys, right?
Yeah, the control.
And Fadi gave me a lot of independence.
Yes.
Right. And so that allowed me to try things, spending other people's money. Yeah, it's always good to spend someone else's money. Yeah. But it worked.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that, over the past 3 years, maybe a little less, 2.5, 3 years, I've spent probably $60,000 on different trainings. And because what I discovered was the thing I wanted to help myself realize the why everything worked at Agland Outfitters. Right. And I wanted to know more about the why when I did things with some clients, it worked. And when I did things with other clients, it didn't work. And it was really frustrating me when it didn't work, right? Like it really ate at me when I was getting paid to do something for somebody and it didn't work.
Yeah. Well, listen, marketing is one of those gigs that if you're new into marketing, the assumption is that I'm just going to have this post is going to blow up. This thing is going to be the thing that's going to carry it all, right?
Yeah, there's this one silver bullet.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for that one thing to go viral, and then it's on.
Which is how I came up with the name 6-Shooter Marketing, by the way.
Nice.
Yeah. People always ask me what's 6-Shooter. Well, it's because there's no silver bullet.
Yeah.
You need to have when I first started, I was like, we're going to load the gun with 6 bullets, 6 different strategies we're going to do.
Yeah.
We're going to measure them all. And every 60 days, we're going to decide, okay, these 3 are doing great. These 3 are getting out. We're going to put 3 different ones in.
Yeah.
That's how I came up with
even with
idea
us,
or the name.
As a small business, the marketing side of it is that, I think most small business probably have an understanding of, I've got to be in the social media game. I've got to be across these platforms. We tried multiple things. I mean, we were doing things in Snapchat and we were doing things over in these other, growing platforms. I mean, TikTok. But then also you got to also understand where your market's at, right?
Well,
and if you're an old person on TikTok, gosh, I hope you're not out there doing a dance, but you probably are watching all of these other videos or whatever the case may be. But we kind of backed that up a little bit and really went back to roots. I mean, so it is kind of like what
were
your
roots?
Well, so for us, it's telling the story. It's who you are, right? And it's really interesting when I sat in here with Sam. Sam Sam Smith said the same thing. He's like, you got to know who you are as a business first, before you can set forth what your plan's going to be.
Well, and here's the thing too, and this is what this retrospectively, I'm like, that's what we did at Agland Outfitters so well, right? Was it's not even about your story, right? And this is what, when I work with clients, I 95%, they focus on exactly what you said, right? There's all these different platforms. Which platform is going to be the magic bullet, right?
Yeah.
And or what's our targeting? They focus on the advertising.
Yeah.
And they've skipped what they're saying in those platforms. It doesn't matter what platform you're on.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't have your messaging in the right way that people are going to want to be a part of that.
Right.
You can put it on every platform in the world, right? It doesn't matter. You're pissing money away.
You can do all that.
Exactly.
Stuff.
You can go spend $100,000 on ads.
Yep.
But if you are not speaking to your audience in a way that resonates with them, that makes them want to give you their money, no one buys anything until they hear or read the words that makes them want to buy something.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you don't say the right words that make your customers want to buy from you, they're not going to buy from you.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm not that shaky on that video that's looking at you there. It's kind of, my video's attached to the table here. I like that Dallas is comfortable because I want to make sure he's comfortable as he's talking here, because that's how we get good conversation going. The marketing piece of the business, and I think that's really critical right now, especially where everybody's at, small business world. And there's all different levels of need. There's all different levels of transparency going on within the market. We'll get a little further down that chute as we kind of talk today. But these guys that are out there that are looking for the silver bullet and then hearing, listen, that doesn't exist. You've got to build from ground up. And it's really foundational. It's let's start here and then we'll build off of this. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, again, like Sam said, Sam talked about being a realtor and the perception of a realtor is, suit and tie and buttoned up and really, professional as the industry sees that standard. Right. And then he's sitting here going, listen, man, I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. But the people that I interact with really are kind of in the same boat that I'm in, man. I'd rather wear a hoodie and just go as who I am. And they know this is what you get, as opposed to, he feels like sometimes that is the thing that separates that comfortability when he's dealing with clients. And that's great. I mean, I'm not going to tell it, I'm not going to sit here on this podcast and tell you that every realtor needs to go down that line. I think that, just in the same way, when I go and do business with someone else, especially if it's something where I'm making big purchases, car place or home or whatever the case may be, there's a bunch of things that go along with it. I want to know that I'm valued. I want to know that my money is carrying that value and getting me the best for what I'm spending. But also at that same time, I want to build the connection. I don't want to do something and then this person disappears and I never hear from them again, never create a relationship, so that the next time I'm also building that reinforcement. Hey, if I need a good realtor, here's my guy. If I need another car, here's my guy or here's my girl or whatever. And so you're building, in building your message and your story and in the marketing scheme of it, in the interaction, you're building the relationships, you're building the experiences, you're building all of those things that are now stacking on top of that message. Like if I tell you this is who I am, all my interaction needs to reinforce this is who we are.
Well, and a lot of businesses spend way too much time telling you who they are.
Yes.
Right? Instead of talking about the problem you solve.
Right.
So the human brain.
Why do you need me?
Why do you need me?
Yeah.
Right. The human brain only has two functions. Right. One is to keep you alive. Right. And the way it does that is to help you survive or thrive.
Yep.
And conserve calories. That's it.
Yep.
So if your messaging doesn't explain to your customers how you help them survive and thrive, and if you don't do it clearly enough that they don't have to burn a lot of calories to figure out what you're saying,
right,
you're done. People waste an enormous amount of money. People waste an enormous amount of money on marketing because they don't do those two things. They end up talking about themselves. Oh, I started this business back in 1985 with Uncle Joe and yada, yada, yada. And it's because I'm passionate about this. And, I love helping these people and no one cares.
Right.
All they're doing then is scanning your information, trying to figure out, okay, how the hell are you going to help me survive or thrive?
Well, and let's be honest, we live in a society now with an attention span that's this big as well, too.
Oh, for sure.
So,
we get 5,000 messages a day.
Right.
The average American consumes 5,000 messages a day.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying they get 5,000 text messages. I'm saying when you see a stoplight, that's a message. Yeah. When you see a road sign, that's a message. When you get a text, when you get an email, we are inundated with messages. And the only way to get their attention is to capture them with a story. Like, think about it. So the average person daydreams 30% of the day. 30% of your time, you're daydreaming. And I don't mean like, oh, I want to have a unicorn one day. Like you start daydreaming about the stuff you have to do later, right, or your kids' soccer game that night or whatever. It's subconscious.
Yep.
And so to get someone's attention, you have to tell them a story that they want to be a part of.
Yeah.
And that's the key. So when I discovered the story brand framework a couple years ago, I was like, man, this is what I've been doing for 15 years, but this is just a framework for me to use, right? And so there's 7 parts to that story that are critical. And once you develop that story, it makes everything easier, right? Because most businesses also, the way their marketing plan came to be is that they hired their niece to run their social media, right? The radio salesperson came in and said, hey, we can get you in front of 10,000 people a day on the radio. Yep. They help you write your radio commercial. You run in some Google ads. Everything is telling a different story across all these mediums. So there's no cohesiveness. And then you're just pissing money away talking about yourself on all of them.
Yeah.
And it's a recipe for disaster.
Just wondering, have you been reading my business plan or something? It's kind of ironic because my niece actually runs my social media. So anyway,
which there's nothing wrong with your niece running the social media.
No.
Let me be clear about that. Like, it's just that typically, my point is that you've got 6 different people working on 8 different things.
Yeah, we consolidate down. I totally relate to what you're saying, where when we get into the market, and especially when you're starting up new business, man, I don't want to call it vultures because that sounds really terrible, but it is people doing their job. But it's like, here comes the radio station, here comes the television station, here comes this social media site, here comes this social media managing company, here comes, have you thought about this? And I mean, it's just, you're inundated. In the beginning, when we opened up this part of our business 5 years ago, now keeping in mind, we're a 30-year business. 5 years ago, we opened this part of the business, and I'm sitting there going, I don't have enough time to do everything. Like, I was trying to do it all. I'm trying to build a retail establishment, and I'm trying to do all our social media and everything else. And again, to that point of the silver bullet, like, okay, social media is just about finding good messages, popping them out there. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to like it. I'm going to hit all my friends, make them all like my page. It's going to all work out. And then they're going to share my stuff, and it's going to be organic, as you said earlier. And not once in any of that, in that window of vision, am I sitting there looking at algorithms? Am I looking at that window of space that people actually fill? Meaning, listen, all you got to do is either think about your social media browsing or just watch somebody who's sitting next to you. Literally, they've got 2 or 3 minutes in their time. They pop a phone open, they flip through it, and if there's not anything in there that was really interesting, in their mind, they go, okay, I'm kind of caught up, click, turn it off, put it back in their pocket. Yep. And that window of capturing that particular thing is tiny at best. And so we talk about that attention span, right? It's not so much the fact that we're creating a bunch of attention deficit disorder society, but it kind of feels like that. I mean, it feels like you've got a very small window of time in people's day, maybe multiple times, but you've got to grasp that one thing has to resonate with your group that you're trying to find, and it's got to be interesting enough for them to stop scrolling to see it.
And that's exactly what, when I build a company's social media game plan, right? How do you do that? How do you resonate with them? Well, the first thing you do is you quit talking about yourself.
Yep.
Right. And we talked about earlier, like the problem. If I'm scrolling through, right, and I see through Facebook ads to what they're doing, like, quite easily, right? It's what I do.
Sure.
Well, one of them got me last month, right? Because it hit me right in the face with the problem I was dealing with. And that's all it talked about, right? It talked about my problem, my internal problem.
Yeah.
And that so when we talk about the story brand framework, just real quickly, so there's 7 parts. First, you have to know who your customer is, who the character is, and what do they want. What are the problems?
I want to make sure everybody's taking notes here.
Yeah, this would be the note-taking part.
This is where you probably want to write these down if you're listening.
So you have the character, and what do they want? And the character is the hero of the story. You as the business are not the hero of the story. Right. The customer is the hero. Yep. So we're going to focus on them, and what do they want? Now, what are the problems keeping them from getting that? Right, and there's 3 different problems. One of them is their external problem, which is what most businesses advertise towards, right? And that might be they don't know if they have enough money to afford it. They don't. So I'm working with a senior living community right now, and the external problem is, well, they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to go through the Medicaid issues. They don't know how they can afford $4,000 a month. The internal problem is, they're worried their mom and dad's going to die because they can't figure this out.
Right.
They're worried their mom and dad's going to fall. They're not going to take their medicine. They're not going to eat, whatever it is, right? That's their internal problem. And that's the one that businesses should focus on, because that's the one that customers make buying decisions on.
Right.
People don't make buying decisions based on their external problems. It's what are they feeling?
Yeah, that's a good point. The internal is the emotional, right?
And then the philosophical problem is, it shouldn't be so hard for my parents to live comfortably in their final years.
Right.
This shouldn't be that hard. You have to speak to all 3 of those, but you need to focus on the internal. So once we talk about the problems, then we talk about you as the business and their guide, right? And there's 2 things that you use to show how you are the guide to help them solve their problems. One is you show empathy. So look, we understand. This is not an easy part of life to think about your parents in this situation, right? That's why we have helped thousands of families over the past 20 years do this. So your guide, you're the empathy, and then you have the authority. We're top 5% of the senior living communities in the country, whatever. Then you give them the simple plan to take action, right? So what may be a very complicated sales process,
right,
you have to make it feel very simple. So number one, book a tour. Number two, we'll address the needs that your dad needs. And three, we'll move you guys in, no problem. And he can enjoy more freedom, more safety, more care, whatever. So that's the 3-step plan of a very complicated process. Then we go into the call to action. And this is what, it's amazing how many people I work with that on their website, they don't have a clear call to action, like buy now, right? Book a tour, book an appointment, schedule something, whatever. Make the call to action. And once you have the call to action, there's 2 different calls to action types too. One is the buy now. But for a lot of businesses, financial planners, right? They may not be ready to have an appointment with you.
Right.
But you've got a ton of value you can give them in exchange for their information, right? So, hey, here's what we think about the next PPP stuff. Here's how we think COVID in 2021 is going to impact the market the first 2 quarters. Whatever. They download that. You get their information. Now, you obviously know that Dallas Shipp is interested in some financial information.
Right.
You reach out with a text message, an email, whatever, and just say, hey, Dallas, saw you downloaded it. Let me know if I can help you anything. You have any questions? And you nurture them. Yep. Right? You just nurture that conversation, because you can't have a sale without a conversation. And that's what I always tell people. You have to turn the leads into conversations into sales. So once you've done that, then we reiterate how successful you are when you work with us. How much better is your life going to be because you did business with us? And then we remind them about their problem again. This is how terrible it's going to be if you don't. And you think about this whole story, like if you're baking a loaf of bread, right? The success and the guide and all the good stuff is like the flour. You want a lot of it. But that pain, those problems, and the failure, the feeling of failure is like the salt. You still need a little bit, right? And so when we build these narratives for our clients, or we coach them and their team, we're doing coaching now that I love. And when we do that, to see the light bulbs come on and to see them look at their old marketing stuff and be like, well, no wonder we weren't getting any appointments. Right. No wonder our sales were crap, right? We spent our whole time talking about us, or talking about our products, or talking about this and that.
What's the light bulb moments for that business or entity that's using your service?
Huge.
Right.
And I remember back Agland Outfitters, right? I mean, I convinced them after about a year. I was like, we don't sell A&M merchandise. We sell the ability to walk into your office on Monday morning after a big win and pump your chest and look at my shirt. Someone talk to me.
Right.
Someone bring it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Or for the ladies, oh my God, they're at the tailgate. Where'd you get that dress?
Right.
That's what you're selling. Sure. You're not selling the t-shirts. You're not selling. What are you really selling? You're selling the solution to their problem, or you're selling something they're passionate about. That's what you're selling.
Yeah. I mean, that's all good stuff, man. And I mean, if you're listening to that, hopefully you're taking good notes, because I mean, there's things in there that resonate even with us as a business that I can think back to when we were putting together the transition, because we were transitioning. Transition is not a good word. Addition is probably a better opportunity. I mean, we go 25 years in with screen printing, embroidery, then we've here in 5 years of added retail, to signing, to all the other stuff that's a part of that. And so each stretch, it has its own entity somewhere that is a need, right? Like we're working back into that. Maybe the people that, we're working with they're small businesses. Maybe they're, I'm going to a party and I need something as a gift. Maybe it's, I'm, starting this deal and I need promotional goods, whatever it looks like. But in that world, there's so many different avenues, and I think that's probably the thing that I can probably relate to the most is where's my avenue as a business to make my most impact? And the reality of that is each of those avenues carries its own reward to an extent. Some may be bigger than others. But to your point, you're like, let's don't throw money at everything to try and make it all stick to a wall, because that this part over here is going to garner X percent. This part over here is a bigger priority. And then you kind of work your way through that to see what it is. But you're still building your brand, your image, your message, all of that stuff in that what time because again, you can throw money at it, like you said, all day long.
Yep.
Time
you can throw a lot of money at bad marketing.
Yeah, and time is probably of more value than money because you're never going to recoup that. You may not recoup the money either, but at the same time, time is money when you're a small business owner.
Absolutely.
And where you're pushing your attention to has to be time that's invested to grow the business.
Well, and that's when the technology side of marketing comes into play, right? I mean, and so if you want to write this down too, I used to call this the SAT model. I mean, I live in a college town. Everyone knows what the SATs are. You have to have the story, then the advertising strategy, and then the right technology to follow up with everybody, right? And that's what it comes down to. For when I work with a client, those are the three things we look at. You may have a great advertising plan, but you don't have the follow-up systems in place. Right. So like we use a tool, for instance, where someone goes to your website and downloads whatever, or they want to schedule a tour, 4 minutes, 8 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is, they get a text message. Hey, Dallas, thanks for booking this appointment with us. Maybe you ask them a question, get some conversation going before the appointment. And all that's automated. But then if they respond, then you get a notification, and it goes back and forth from automated to person. Yep. And by the time you meet with somebody, like you feel like there's some rapport there already.
Sure.
And you remind them of the appointment.
Well, and the best technologies, the automated technologies, are the ones that feel like one-on-one person as well too.
And that's where everything in marketing is a combination of art and science. Right. The science is the tool, but there's an art behind what do you say in these text messages? And again, if you didn't have your story done first, everything's going to be disjointed.
Yeah.
You have got to have that story put together in a way that works for everybody.
Yeah.
And the other part of that story is your team has to know it, right? Most salespeople do not focus on their problem, on their customers' problems.
Yeah.
Right. They just start going into features and benefits, right? How many salespeople out there have been through the whole features and benefits training, right?
Yep.
That's great. And you're going to get there. But your conversation with a customer should be this much about features and benefits.
Yeah.
And this much about the person's problem. When you agitate that problem and show and build trust that you can solve it,
sure,
and provide value to solve it, you're in.
Yeah. And I think, in the world of small business, the assumption is on the backside, like what I do day in and day out will build my model, will build my storyline, so to say. I mean, I always, if you've come in and you've interacted with me in the store, the one part about me, and I always say it when I sit down here, and especially here at the podcast, I have no problem with talking to people. I can talk to people like I've known them for 20 years. But there are people that I can point back to who helped me develop that skill set, right? But at the same point, it's you walk in, I want you to have that experience, right? Nobody goes and talks, they're not talking long-term about a price I got on something or this particular deal and what it felt like or whatever. They'll talk about the experience that they had. And that experience then sets the tone for the storyline that they're telling for you to their friends, to their family. And again, we can tie this back to word of mouth. It's not always word of mouth. I mean, it can also be things that are shot down through social media.
Well, but there's a book called Talk Triggers.
Yeah.
Have you heard of it?
I have not.
If you like to read, this is one of my books I tell everyone to read. And it's about what can your business do that's going to get people to talk about your business organically.
Yeah.
Right. And so one of the examples, there's a theme park in Indiana where they have free sodas and free sunscreen all day. They're all over the park. Mm-hmm. People lose their minds because they have been programmed by every other theme park in the world that you have to pay $15 for a Coke and $25 for a bottle of sunscreen. Right. And so when you go in their Google My Business and you go in their reviews, they're the highest rated theme park in the world.
Right.
Or at least in America. They're higher rated than Disney World. They're higher rated than Six Flags. They're the highest rated because people are so taken back by really just
2 extra steps, really.
Yeah, if I can get you to pay me $75 and I give you 17 cents worth of Coke 3 times a day.
Yeah.
Right? Like people don't think about that.
Right.
They think through how things are now.
Yeah.
Right? And so,
or they extrapolate it out so far that they don't see the investment on the return.
Yeah.
Right. They just go, wait, if I give away Coke and I give away Sunshine, do you know how much that's going to cost me?
Exactly.
Not looking at what's the extrapolation backwards. Like, I can spend this much money and man, I'll be out of money. But then you're not looking at it as once I round the corner here, what's coming back into our pocket for the investment that we put in.
So speaking of theme parks, there was a great theme park that I went to in junior high. My grandparents took me and my sister on vacation in Nashville. It's called Opryland USA or Opryland Theme Park, whatever. And it was a really cool park. Like every day there were concerts we saw George Jones, we saw Alabama, we saw, I don't know, Trisha Yearwood maybe. There was a lot of concerts. And so you ride the roller coasters.
You're dating yourself with some of these people.
Yeah, I mean, this was 93, 94. I remember it because it was the year the Rockets won the championship the first time, because I had on all my pictures I've got on Rockets World Championship
now
stuff,
you're
right?
really
yeah,
dating
exactly.
yourself, yeah.
This was the Jordan was retired for a couple of years there. And but anyway, so Opryland Theme Park was right next to Opryland Hotel. And they looked at the numbers of the theme park and they're like, we're losing money. So they shut down the park. Well, then the Opryland Hotel went down by like 35% because people were staying at the hotel to go to the theme park, and they never made that connection before so then they went into super panic mode. And you know, they're doing okay now, but if you've ever been to Nashville, Opryland is like 7-8 miles north of the downtown area that's blowing up right now.
Right.
And so it's not like the popular hotel. It's a Gaylord hotel. It was their first major property. It's a beautiful hotel, but it's just not conveniently located to any other attractions now.
Right.
And so they really screwed the pooch on that. So, you know, looking at your overall picture is critical as well. Not everything is as black and white everything's connected.
Right.
Right. So you mentioned that, I'm going to flip the table here for a second, which, by the way, did I shake this so much that the camera's moved off of me?
Yeah, I don't know.
Bad.
That's a good question. I mean, worst case scenario, man, we're going to be here in the middle. So I was telling him before we got started, we got 2 camera system that we're working in here, but I do have it attached to the table. So, but we got a good one either way. I
get excited.
I'd rather you be passionate and shake the hell out of the camera, and we'll figure it out at the end here.
So you said that, word of mouth. So for your business, there's not a whole lot product wise that sets you apart.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. There's other people.
It's got to be about your service.
Absolutely.
It's got to be about the extras that you add.
Yeah.
Right. So what's the problem you solve for people, and what are some of your talk triggers?
Well, listen, so, my background, and I've talked about it on other podcasts or whatever. So I've spent 30 years in retail, and 20 of those years was as a store manager in a Walmart. And there was a presentation that was given by Herman Cain. Herman Cain passed away.
Yeah, I loved Herman Cain.
I mean, awesome businessman. Everybody wants to talk about Herman Cain, the politician and all that other stuff. Listen, before he was that, he was an incredible business professional. And one of the things that he talked about that really resonated me was he comes and he's addressing Walmart's, we've got 5,000 managers in this arena, and he's talking about how do you exceed people's expectations? And he goes into this long deal he goes, it can be something as simple, and it's funny that you were talking about the other stuff, but he goes, the one thing that has the biggest knock with Walmart is standing in a line to get checked out, right? But he goes, if you're up at the front and you decide to hand a pack of gum out to everybody that's standing in the line and apologize for the line and, that kind of stuff, just the fact that you acknowledge the problem and then you give something, not in return, but I mean to show empathy. Yeah, to show that, hey man, we get it, we understand it. And he go and again, it's outside of the box thinking, because corporate's going to tell you this is what you can and can't do and everything else. But in the small business world, you are corporate. I mean, you're your own corporate level and you can make those decisions. One of the things that I say about us as a business, when I'm talking to somebody who's coming in or they're trying to make a decision where they're going to go, is like, listen, you've got multiple places that you can go that sell the same things that we sell, that have the same, services and everything else. The difference with us is when you walk into our business, we're not just going to sit there and just, okay, what next? Let's fill this order form out. Let's get your order done. Out to you. See you later. Have a nice day. Thanks for paying us. That's not how that's going to work. What we tell everybody is we are intent with the idea that we know we're not number one in town And quite honestly, this would be something that you would probably never expect a business owner to say. We don't want to be number one.
That's not unexpected. I mean, that's not a bad plan.
But what we tell everybody is we do number two better than anybody else, and we take care of our backyard. Where we live, where we reside, what we service here in town. Yeah, you can say it, number one's not going anywhere either. They work here and all this other stuff. But number one is so stretched out nationwide that what does their backyard mean to them? Mm-hmm. And for us, backyard for us means, whether we live, survive this deal or we don't, right? For them, hey, we've got 49 other states that we can work in if we need to. How many other cities, all of this other stuff. And so for us, doing number two and doing it extremely well and building the relationship with the people who walk in the door, that's our number one priority for things. We want to make sure that if you're coming and doing business with us, that when you're done, we know your name, we know your family, we know your business, we know what your business does. We're asking all of those things in the process because, and I'll go back to what I said earlier, we're creating the experience. Now, if you haven't done business with us, this may not resonate to you because if you're at number one is about volume. Number one is get in, get out, get in, get out, get in, get out. Number two, where we're filling that role for us is we're going to take the time to understand our customer's need. We're going to take the time to understand who our customer is. And then the next time that they come in, we don't greet them with a, hey, sir, hey, ma'am, how are you doing? It's, hey, John, hey, Sally, how are you? Hey, how's the business doing? And we start talking off of not a script. We talk off of, what, we prioritize as a script, maybe when you're first having that conversation, to building a relationship that now goes off the table. And now it's truly relational. And then when we're sitting there with that customer and every time they come in, now we build a little bit more every time. We're sitting there learning about, hey, your kid had a baseball game the other night. I heard he did pretty well, man. That's awesome. Where are you going to get that when you're talking about the business survival? The one thing, like we said earlier, that people relate to is relationships. If I know when I walk in, more about me than just my dollar and what my business name is, man, I'm all about building that relationship. But that's also what has been instilled in me when I would I think one of the other podcasts we talked about, as a Walmart store manager, you're going to spend some time up at the service desk dealing with some mad people, right?
Yep.
And if you walk up there and your approach to that is, what do you want? What are we dealing with? What's going on? Instead of walking up, and the first thing that I do when I'd walk up to somebody is say, hey, I'm Lowell, shake their hand. And something, again, that somebody taught me a long time ago was how my handshake was. Sounds completely stupid, right? Until you see it and experience it. And so when you shake, I had a gentleman that I worked with who was teaching me as a young manager how to be good at communication. One handshake, one hand right on the forearm. And then it's like, tell me what I can do to solve this problem for you. What can we do to make this right? Right. And it's not the idea of what do you want? It's the idea of, I already know I'm up here because there's a problem. I'm up here because I want to know what is it going to take to ensure that when you leave here, not only are you going to tell your friends you had a good experience, not only are you going to tell your friends that we actually gave a crap to take care of you, that you're going to leave and go, listen, if you got any problems, this is the guy. Yeah. Right. And so it's the same thing for us here is I want people to leave here and talk about our people. I want them to leave here and go, listen, this is my girl. This is my guy. This is who I deal with, man. This place is phenomenal when it comes to knowing who I am, what I need, being in front of it. Mm-hmm. Like we sit there and talk about, look, man, this is going on. And we know that this particular business is probably getting ready to turn the corner to this. Have we reached back out to them just to see kind of what their needs are? Have things changed? And obviously in a post-COVID world here, lots of things change for things. We've got, this event always comes around every year. Well, a lot of events didn't come around this year. Yeah. But that still doesn't mean we don't make those contacts and talk to people just so we know, hey, we're thinking about you. We're keeping track of the things that affects your life as a business as well too. And we want to give you the best possible customer service. But we also understand that our future is based upon taking care of our backyard. It's not about us going, man, how can we get into Huntsville, and Houston, San Antonio, and Austin? We don't look that far.
Those are two different businesses.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, and everyone, I think they assume that bigger is better.
Yeah.
But a lot of times bigger is just more headaches for not a lot more money, right? If you go from $1 million company to a $5 million company, well, you have to increase your staff. You have to increase your overhead. And so instead of taking home, I'm making these numbers up, instead of taking home $100,000, you don't now take home $3 million.
Yeah.
Right. Now maybe you take home $150,000.
Right.
So what was the difference? What is the difference in your headache, in your life, in your schedule for that extra $50,000 a year?
Listen, I tell people all the time. So we have two facilities here. We have this main facility that we built 5 years ago. It's where our customers come. It's really where they know us now. But we used to be in the strip next door. Now we still have the strip next door, right? The difference being is we said, we're going to put this on. This is going to be a much more professional look for us. And we grew really fast, really quick, probably a little too fast at what we needed to do. But at the same standpoint, our biggest challenge wasn't that we jumped into a new building over here. We thought, listen, we're right here. But the communication internally and the addition of bodies that we didn't have when we were doing it before were phenomenal. It was like, listen, the fact that we were in the same suite at one point, it was really easy to communicate with people. But when we stretched and grew, even though there's a sidewalk that separates us, it was still this opportunity of we got to be better communicators in order to be able to shore up where some of these holes are starting to appear at.
And isn't that an interesting dilemma, right?
Yeah.
That mix of over communicating versus under communicating. There's a very thin line between not bombarding people with information, but getting them the right information.
Well,
right?
you can imagine when I came here to the business 5 years ago as one of the owners, I came in with working in business formats that had 750 people working there, right? I've got multi-layers of leadership underneath me that I'm not trying to micromanage all the way down to 750. I'm trying to manage within my tier and let those folks develop their skill sets to develop their piece. Well, then we come over here and there's no such thing as, tiered structure of leadership. We have to
pretty flat, right?
Yeah, and we had to create that. But I came in with the mentality of, listen, we can do this, but we're going to have to change what we did. And it was a tough growing time for us. Those first couple of years of me being here and instilling some of the things and really kind of moving away from big set corporate mindset to small business need and what we needed as a business to shore up and secure for growth. That wasn't met with just people going, yes, we're so glad you're here. It was met with a lot of resistance. But here we are now 5 years down the road and nobody wants to go back, Right. So again, your business is what you put into it. But I think the one thing in small business that struggles is that vision down the road. I don't want to be right here in this moment. I want to see, look, if I got to align myself for 5 years, then I've got to have, like you said earlier, I've got that story plan to how to get to 5 years is also an internal map really for how this is going to happen. It may happen on different timelines of what I'm going to do. And that may have to constantly shift and move.
Well, I think that's one of the things. So, Donald Miller, he's the one that created the 7-part framework that I talked about. And so I've been a certified story brand guide now for a couple of years, and then this past October, I was picked as one of their first coaches, and so I'm a Business Made Simple certified coach now. And one of the I guess classes, courses, whatever you want to call it, that we do is called Hero on a Mission, and it's exactly what you're talking about. And it's a super powerful opportunity to take your team through, because what it does is it helps you define exactly what you want, and then we're going to reverse engineer that to the 10-year, 5-year, 1-year plan. Mm-hmm. And the thing that's helped me the most since I started using it back in October is breaking down the difference between your projects and your tasks, right? Mm-hmm. And like EOS, they use the rocks is their deal. But it's what are the 3 things I can do today that are really going to move the needle? If I don't go pick up my dry cleaner today, that's fine. They can wait till tomorrow. If I don't call someone back about getting my roof looked at, that can wait till tomorrow. All those are the tasks. But what we tend to do is we focus on this little crap, right? Because and some people have actually been trained to do this.
Yes.
Hey, knock out the little things. You'll feel more motivated.
Yeah.
No, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Start your day, block off the first 2 or 3 hours of your day, and just do your projects. Just focus on your rocks. What do you have to get done to get the things moving? And to me, that's the biggest shift I have, 2020 was a weird year for a lot of people.
Sure.
Right. I mean, I got my head cut off in the spring because I had been working with mostly summer camps. Well, guess what?
Those didn't.
They all went away.
Right.
So we lost a ton of our business. And so it caused me to shift into a world that I had never been in before.
Right.
With PPE and masks and all this, I thought, oh man, this is going to be huge. I've got some ins with suppliers and I did a little bit. We sold about 3 million masks, but it pulled me away from building my business.
Right.
And so once I realized that the world's not ending, everything's gonna be fine, but you got to get your head back in the game. That was late summer, and I really started refocusing myself. And then the coaching opportunity came along, and I was like, man, this is what I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
Right. Like I would love to be a baseball coach.
Yeah.
Right. I would love to teach young men how to be men. Right. I would love to. And one of my things that I'm going to do with this coaching, and I know I'm kind of on a rant here.
No, you're actually leading down to my next line. So you're
one
doing
of the
good.
things that I'm very passionate about is helping, kids that grow up without a father.
Yeah.
I think that is the biggest issue we face overall in America, right? Is the broken homes that are, I read a book when we found we were having a little girl 3 years ago. Someone gave me the book, Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters.
Incredible book.
Yep. If you've got a little girl,
Yep.
Even if you've got a grown daughter, you should read that book because
Absolutely.
it is this. First of all, the numbers in there will scare the piss out of you, right?
Yeah.
But what it basically boiled down to was a girl that grows up without a father has about a 6% chance of being a healthy, functioning.
Yeah, what would be classified normal?
I would just say healthy and functioning adult.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
The increased risk of sexual assault and alcoholism and suicide and all these things.
Sure.
It starts when they don't have a dad, right? And the stories they tell. Anyway, it's a great book. But what it showed to be, and then I did some additional research about boys. Same thing, right? When you don't have a father, you have about a 6% chance of not being sucked into addiction or homelessness, suicide, all these bad things, right? And when you see these things happening on the news, I'm like, the tools that are in the Business Made Simple framework, I love helping business owners, right? But I want to create a platform eventually in the next couple of years that I take that and teach these kids. And I say kids, I mean, they'll be young adults,
right?
18 to 25-year-olds that want something different. They don't want to be stuck in a minimum wage job. They don't, right. And they're hungry, right? I want to give them these tools because when I was a kid, I remember my grandfather was like, hey, when you go apply for that job at Kroger, ask to speak to the manager.
Yep.
Ask to speak to the store manager.
Yeah.
Right. And introduce yourself. Wear a nice shirt. You don't have to wear a suit to go get a job at Kroger, but
right.
Wear nice jeans, wear a nice shirt, shake his hand, right, the right way.
Yep. And
just say, hi, I'm Dallas Shipp, and I'm applying for a job. Would love, the opportunity to work for you guys. And I promise you, you're going to be the only person that does that,
yep.
Right? And so even before I started doing the Business Made Simple coaching, which we may just have to do another podcast to talk more about that. But, I've done speeches here at A&M where I tell kids, look, I love speaking to freshmen, right? Because I say, look, you can decide right now what you want your resume to look like when you graduate.
Yep.
And you have to be ready for those opportunities. I tell people, and I worked with Larry over at Copy Corner before he sold it. He loved this idea. I said, look, I want to give them a thing where they can come get like 200 free business cards. Because I said, if you are the only kid that has a business card at these career fairs,
yep.
Everyone else's resume is going into a folder. Your business card is going in their pocket.
Yep.
So when they get to the hotel that night and they pull out their wallet or whatever and they see your business card, or if you meet someone in line at McDonald's and you start talking and, oh yeah, here's my card. I'd love to talk to you. You're going to make an impact. Less than 1% are ever going to do it.
Yep.
Well, I told them, I said, look, statistically, 3% of you in the room will take me up on this. When we did the numbers, I think it was 2.5% of everyone I gave those cards to. They could go get 200 free cards. 2% redeemed them.
Crazy.
And so I say all that because I'm very passionate about, teaching young entrepreneurs what it takes, what the plans are. You have to, and for business owners too, you have to have a system.
Yeah.
That's why I say the SAT model, right? There has to be a system to it. You have to know why you're doing the things you're doing. If you don't, that's when people get the shiny object syndrome, right? And they jump around like, oh, I'm gonna do this. Well, it doesn't work. So I'm gonna do this, and it doesn't work. I'm gonna do this, and it works for a little while. So they start putting a lot of money into it, which is even more dangerous because now they've ignored everything else and they're focusing on everything that is working for the moment. And eventually, so let's talk about Facebook pages, right? When they first started, I guess 10 years ago, right? You could make a lot of money running a Facebook page.
Yep.
You can't do that anymore.
No.
Yep. If you've got 100,000 followers, they're going to show it to about 3,000 people organically, And so it's a different world. It all changes. Everyone figures out what's happening, and then they want to make some money off of it.
Well, and it's a constant moving shift. It's not one thing you can't say, oh, I figured this out, because as soon as you figure it out, we're moving the target.
Well, and that's why I think it's so important to have someone. I mean, it doesn't have to be me. You can have someone in your team that's staying on top of what's happening and what's coming along. I mean, when I say the money I've spent on these trainings and conferences and networking, I mean, I've networked with hundreds of marketers over the past few years, right? Because I want to know that when I'm doing something with a client, even if I haven't done it, I've got enough information from 3-4 different people that I know it works. Yeah, right? And I didn't do that when I first started.
So I want to reinforce something because I'm a part of that 6% growing up without a dad part that you were talking about.
This is great.
That turned it out. And I think it's important to kind of touch back on that because there's a couple of things buried in there that I want to bring to the forefront. So, single mom growing up, didn't know my dad from about age 5 on, right? So, and then reconnected back at 37.
Did you have any other male influences?
Uncles? So the biggest influence in my life was actually in martial arts. So I've been, I don't share it with a lot of people. I'm 6-degree black belt in martial arts for over 40 years.
I won't mess with you.
And so, thanks. So I just keep a leg's distance here. And my instructor really kind of filled a role for me. Although my instructor was really at that time only about 11 years older than I was. I mean, he was a kid opening a school and starting out, but I was his first student, right? And he filled a role for me, not necessarily the role that I needed, as most people would envision a father figure. His role was more so in building structure, in building discipline, in building passion, those types of things. So,
systems.
Yeah. Right? And so for me, I tell people all the time, I could have turned into the hoodlum and nobody would have blamed me because my background would have justified that, right? Where I came up, how I grew up. We were dirt poor when I grew up. All of those things would have justified all that. And the ends to the means could have just been washed away by look at where I came from. Instead, we took the other route of that. I didn't go to college. So I'm a product of hard work, digging in, going ground up and learning my way and being fortunate enough to get on with a company like Walmart that really valued what you're putting in to where we can grow you.
Did you start off at entry level to Walmart?
I start off pushing baskets.
Okay.
I mean, that's about as low as you can get. Cleaning toilets, all the other stuff that go along with being what we referred to at that time as a stockman.
And then you became the store manager.
I did. And
with no degree.
With no degree. And that transition to get into management was 4 years. And then that transition to get into store manager role was 4 more years. So 8 years from starting, right? But
so in 8 years, you went from pushing carts to a store manager?
Absolutely.
Now, if you don't want me not to share this, but
no, you're good.
What do you share what you made as a store manager in 8 years?
Yeah. So, I mean, let's say at my highest point as a store manager, I was clearing 200.
Yeah.
And so again, and then I'm looking back going, wait, your degree was how much?
Oh, exactly.
Wow, I'm making more than where you were.
Dude.
Now, I'm not anti-college. Don't get me wrong here. And my daughter
will. Great segue, by the way.
My daughter will have an opportunity to choose if that's what she chooses to do. Now, I will tell you this, where the rubber met the road was I was career focused. I found my wife at Walmart. We're going to celebrate 25 years this March being married. And my wife knew, I mean, here's the ride. This is what it's going to look like. How much time I'm going to have to invest in. I'm going to be working, 60 to 80 hours a week, and you're never going to see me during the holidays, and the family's never going to see me, and all this kind of stuff. And it was all at the purpose of making money and moving up. And I would say, man, I want to run the biggest store. I want to be a district manager. I want to move up the ladder. And then as I got into these roles, I started seeing politics start coming in that I'd never seen in these other levels. And so I'm sitting there going, listen, man, I'm not real good at politics. And most of y'all that know me know I'm really not good at politics. I'm a very straightforward shooter with a lot of folks.
I have the same problem.
Yeah. So then the next challenge for me became, I have my daughter, and my daughter was, I think I was 39 when my daughter came along. I mean,
we're right there.
It wasn't for lack of trying. We tried for a really long time and spent a bunch of money trying, by the way. But she finally comes along, and right at that moment, my daughter was born in May of 2011. And at that moment, I knew that I had to make a decision. Where I was in my career at 20 years with Walmart, I'm sitting there going, I can't do what I've done the last 20 years and be present and be successful at being a dad. And I've got to understand that that's all great that I put all this money into the bank and that I've gotten these accolades and awards and all this stuff for doing the things that I was doing. But something has to change here, and I've got to prioritize this. And what do I want to be? A lot of people lose themselves, their identity in what they create. And they create that business model around, whether it's small business, whether it's big corporate, whatever it is. My question is, at the time that they put you in the basket and you're getting ready to go in the ground, I mean, now all of a sudden it's what do you want to be known for? Yeah. Do you want to be known for being a great store manager? Do you want to be known for being a great business leader? Or do you want to be known for being a great dad, an awesome husband, all of these things? And so
have you ever written your obituary?
Oh, I haven't.
It is, dude, it is an emotional thing, but it is powerful.
Sure.
Because it's putting pen to paper.
Yeah.
What do you want your obituary to say?
Well, listen, so I left Walmart knowing that I had to change something. And so then I went, again, man, I'm not trying to knock companies as I go through here, but then I went to Hobby Lobby. And in Hobby Lobby, in my mind, I went to it and said, listen, they're closed on Sundays, Christian company, blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff, you're going to work 48 to 52 hours a week. I'm like, dude, this is awesome. This fits right where I went. I mean, I didn't work a 48, 52-hour week ever in the 4 years that I was there. And 3 months out of the year, I worked 100 hours a week. 3 months out of the year. Now, you can do the math here.
We're 3 months?
3 months out of every year.
Wow.
100 hours a week. You can do the math, and you can go, okay, there's only so many hours, 168 hours in a week, right? And we're closed on Sunday supposedly.
You got to sleep at least 50 hours.
Yeah. And so from November to January, my family didn't hardly see me at all. I was up and gone by 6 and back in around 1 a.m., 2 o'clock in the morning. God. And we were doing this over and over and over and working on Sundays, not because that's what Hobby Lobby expected from me. It's because my leadership in that role of who was above me expected it from me. Yeah. And I can remember my daughter's probably 3, 4 at this time, and she says, Daddy, again, we're in that 3-month window. And I tell people, the other 9 months out of the year wasn't terrible, right? But those 3 months were brutal.
Which are special times for the kids.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah, it's all the major holidays and stuff, right? So my daughter asked me one night, Dad, are you going to be home before dark? And I sat down with my wife. I said, I can't keep doing this. I've jumped from here because I knew I couldn't do it over here to now I realize this isn't going to change for me because of who my leadership is in this role. They're not going to sit there and go, hey, man, we know you want to be a present father, so don't worry about working 100 hours a week. They didn't give a crap about any of that. And so now it was, okay, now I got to move on. I make a very quick jump to at home, which at home for me really reminded me of Walmart in the early years, and I was pretty fired up about being there. But then I get the phone call from the guys here that said, hey, this is what we're doing. And we make the move back here. And to me, even though I could have made well more money staying in the corporate world, I came back to here going, listen, this gives me this, and we can get a little more balance in here. When people start up a business, unfortunately, the magic solution that a lot of folks give behind there is, listen, man, you got to put a lot of hours in to build your business. Mm-hmm. I mean, how successful do you want to be? It's going to require you put in time. So that means you got to give up something. And for a lot of people who have families and everything else, they'll give it up. Listen, I used to tell people all the time, you could take a Walmart schedule and you could look at all those managers that were on there, and you were going to see a bunch of people that were divorced, a bunch of people that were single, and very few people on there that had a successful marriage. It is what it is. And that's what that became. That can transition into small business leadership as well, too. You can go into a business and think, my business has to have me here for 16 hours in the day in order to be successful. And this is what I'm growing, and it's my business and it's everything else. But listen, at the end of the day, man, you can't put a value on what your family seeing, interacting, being there, involved, sports, all the other stuff that you get to be a part of when you're a present parent or a present spouse or whatever that looks like. You can't play that to second fiddle. You can't sit there and justify it to your spouse and just go, listen, man, I'm growing this business. Just suck it up. We got to get through this. If your business is your mistress, then you're going to pay that price.
Well, I think everything you touched on, that's why before 2020, business owners had a higher suicide rate than just about anybody.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're risking the money.
Yep.
You're sacrificing the time.
Yeah.
A lot of times you're losing relationships, not only with your family, but with friends.
Yep.
So you end up in a very, very isolated place.
Absolutely.
Right. That you feel no one else understands.
Yep.
No one gets it. And that was the so it was the Wake Up Warrior Challenge with Garrett White. I don't know if you heard of Garrett. Anyway, it was like a very much no nonsense, like here's all the problems of business owners, right? And it was like this $100 challenge. I was like, man, I like this. It was great. I did it in December, and that was the Facebook ad that got me.
Yeah.
But you mentioned college. That I went to college, right? What do I do that I learned in college? Very little.
Yeah.
The stuff I learned in college, though, it was the network I started building. And it was the extracurricular stuff, like running the battalion, running. I was an RA. I was an officer in several organizations. I would have, so for the battalion, I managed a $500,000 budget,
right,
as a 20-year-old kid,
Yep,
right, like that. That's the kind of stuff that I took out of college,
right.
And I tell kids all the time, like, unless you're going to go be a lawyer, an accountant, a doctor, an engineer,
specialized,
something that's very specialized, the only colleges you should be looking at are the ones that you can build a network.
Yep.
Period.
Yeah.
And beyond that as well, that's the thing. So Donald Miller's thing with Business Made Simple is that you can learn everything you need to know to start and run a business through this course for a couple $1,000s total, probably, right? Instead of going and paying $100,000 for a degree.
Right.
That's his goal. His goal is to make this information available to everyone. And you could just buy the course. It's $275 a year, and watch all the videos and do it yourself. Or you can hire me as a coach to coach you through it, right? And it literally gives you, especially, it's very heavily focused right now in marketing communication. But there's a new course that's coming out next month on negotiation. There's a course coming out about talent management, how to manage your teams. There's lots and lots of really, really good courses in this that, I wish I had had it 10 years ago.
Yeah, listen, there's a lot of stuff to be said about going to college and furthering your education and everything else, and I think there's pieces of that. I watched in my 20 years of watching, whether it was interns coming in or whether it was guys that finished their business management degree that came to work as an assistant manager for Walmart. I watched these guys walk in, and the book smart was walking in thinking that application works no matter where I go, because this is what I was taught by these professors and these books and these classes and everything else. And they walk in and they tell you how you should be running your business, as opposed to getting in and learning the business and then understanding the whys and the why nots and all of this other stuff. And then getting it's like focusing in right here when I walk in with a degree and I'm going, man, this is all the stuff I know and this is valuable stuff. And then you have to back them out to the big picture to understand how this right here affects all of this and why it all works together. And so, again, not knocking the idea of going and getting it, because what it does show is it shows your commitment to earn a degree and to stay with something. But also in the world of OJT, on the job training here, it's the idea of coming in and you learn more skill sets going and doing than you do going and reading.
100%.
And so when you can apply those in an atmosphere that's true atmosphere, not hypothetical today in class, guys, we're going to talk about this and apply this deal. Listen, you want to go talk about how you do communication, go stand in front of an angry customer and try and make it right, and do it to where it is not robotic. Do it where it's not, I'm repeating what I was told, here's my script. do it to where it's genuine. And so, yeah, I mean, so the idea of building that is built through OJT. It's not built in a book. It's not built in a classroom, and again, I'm not knocking professors. I know you guys, most of y'all been there, done that, and you've done some things and you have OJT and all this other stuff, but we send these guys out into the world for failure when we tell them that what you've learned here is going to make you this.
Yeah. And that's a major issue for me. I mean, I remember when I was in school, it's like, oh, your average salary is, $60,000 straight out of college, blah, blah, blah.
Right. But on an average, there's a lot of
engineers and accountants and all this. Then it blows my mind. And this really irritates me on a federal level, because there's so many other ways, though, if you don't have the money, right? And a lot of us don't,
right,
to go get this $100,000 degree in sociology or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That we've conditioned people to think that you have to go to college to be successful.
Right.
You can be very successful going to college.
Yep.
You can be totally broke going to college.
You can.
It is not the deciding factor of where you're going to end up in life, right?
It's not the be all to end all.
No.
Right.
Now, you do have to learn things.
Sure.
But now more than ever, you can start by punching in youtube.com.
Yeah.
And instead of watching cat videos or people falling down and breaking their legs, there's tons of information on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then go to something. I'm not saying you have to come to me, but go to something. There's programs like this, right? That for a couple $100 investment, you can take that knowledge you got for free from YouTube and take it here and then implement it and learn and then look for the next one and go from here. That's what I've been doing for the last 5 years.
Yeah, and I look at things like, so Skillshare. Skillshare is a new website where I think it's $100 a year or something like that, and you have access to thousands and thousands of videos of professionals that are out there kind of walking you through steps and things like that. So, again, there's so many resources that are out there today that weren't even there 5-10 years ago for people to be able to utilize. It's not online college, so to say, or online OJT. I mean, you still got this opportunity to kind of, if I could go back and do it all over again, would I have done it different? I'd have done some things different, but then I also know that my trajectory would have changed somewhere. I mean, if I go to college, I never meet my wife. Right. I mean, we can all kind of backtrack through what our life would be or wouldn't be. But the idea also is how many kids do we send out of college and we say, listen, I got my degree. You've got to pay me $100,000 a year. They go in with the mentality of
it's entitled.
I'm owed this, as opposed to I'm working towards it, so. And those ones that then become the entrepreneurs in the business find out very quickly. I mean, you want to talk about an OJT, go try and start your own business up and be your own entrepreneur in that business model. And you start finding out real quick, hey, that accounting might have been an important class to pay a little bit closer attention to, that business management that I just kind of blew off and squirreled around. There was some stuff in there that I probably could have used, but the biggest resource, and this is going to kind of lead us into our next deal. We're going to step off this a little bit, but our biggest resource is our connections. It is the people that we network with.
Now more than ever.
Yeah. So, we were talking before we sat down here, and we were talking about small businesses.
Real fast on that note, right? Like most businesses ignore the connections they already have.
Absolutely.
Right? You spend your time focusing on bringing in new business as opposed to bringing in repeat business.
Absolutely.
Right? And you don't have any system in place to bring them back in or to encourage referrals or encourage reviews. I talked to, I won't say who yesterday, but they have a database of 11,000 people.
Wow.
So the call was to talk about, they wanted to do a campaign on Google and Facebook, and they wanted some advice, and it was just an advice session. They weren't going to hire me to do it. And I was like, well, let me ask you this. How many existing people do you have on your database? Which, by the way, the goal for them was 2,000 new customers.
Right.
And so they said, we have 11,000 people in our database. I said, so what's your close ratio when someone comes in? They said 20%. Okay. So to get 2,000 people, you need 10,000 customers. New people.
Right.
So if you got your people to average one referral each. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think your close ratio from a referral would be better or lower than 20% that you're getting from all your advertising?
Yeah.
Like, oh, man, you could see the light bulb come on.
Yep.
that's a system that most people don't have in their business, right? And it's very easy to do. You just have to think through it, and again, put the automation in there, think through that automation. But the relationships right now, I mean, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
I hate that statement, by the way, but
we're all in this together.
Yeah.
But as business owners,
yes,
we really are.
Yeah.
Like the government's not looking out for us.
Yeah. Small business owners, we are.
Small business owners, we are in this on our own.
My knock on that has always been the ones who go out there, especially when they're the mask police and all the other stuff in the deal that go out there that say we're all in this together, are the guys that are getting paid to be at home.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there.
Yeah,
Don't get me started on that.
So for the small businesses that are out there, that your scratch is coming from what you do day in and day out. I mean, you've really got to build it, and you're building it in an environment that's unprecedented, never been experienced before. And I don't want to say in American history, but let's be honest, the volume of what we're dealing with being worldwide really has put the clamp on a lot of people. And so we were talking leading up into this about resources and the almost partnerships. I mean, the one thing that I've noticed this year is that partnership and exchange of resources between those small businesses. And it's really, while it's super encouraging, you kind of hope that stretches up the ladder, and that, we talked a little bit about city council before we were sitting down here and everything else. But, I look at pages like Jim Ross's page, where what he throws to that page is small business resources being made available almost in real time. I mean, when Jim knows about it, it's like, boom, here it is. Here's a new grant program. Here's the PPP program. Here's this city council meeting that you may want to be aware that these things are getting discussed. And here's the feed to it. Here's all this stuff. Really resources for small businesses to be a part of. And that page in and of itself garners a lot of weight to small businesses. But if you're not a part of it, you need to be a part of it, especially if you're in the Bryan College Station area. That these guys have instant access to things that Jim is researching, or even in some cases other people are researching on the backside. Then you have Sam Smith's page over here with BCS Entrepreneurs and Small Business Owners. I think I just said that backwards if you're looking for it. So it's BCS Small Business Owner and Entrepreneurs, where that's a more transparent page. It's not so much meant over here as a resource like Jim's page over here. It's meant for almost, I called it and referred to it as open source or open coding, where it's exchange of ideas between small businesses.
It's getting people in the group.
Yes.
To then just...
where I can sit there and say, hey, listen, man, I'm really struggling with this. Who's dealt with this? Because you got 500 businesses that are in there that are sitting there going, listen, I've been there, done that. Let me shoot you something offline here. Let me tell you what I've done. But it's the idea that, so when you say we are in this, together, that is those small businesses sharing those ideas and being open code to be able to say, listen, I've been where you're at. Here's what I've done. Or I crossed that bridge 2 or 3 months ago, and here's what we did. But it's also the idea, like we were saying earlier, you're talking about the level of suicide and identity being placed in small business owners, because they're going, I'm all in here. But all in also for a lot of small business owners is their identity. Yeah. And then if that business is starting to collapse and fail, it's not my business collapsed and failed. It's I have collapsed and failed.
Well, and I think a lot of that is the mentality that, especially if you're a first-time business owner, you have to figure out some way to separate yourself spiritually, emotionally, mentally from that business. And you say, I'm not talking about Trump's politics, but Trump does not look at his businesses like a small business looks at their business.
Right.
He is not worried about one of them failing or 10 of them failing or 100 of them failing. Right. It is all very black and white. And in any large company like that, any large business owner like that, that's how they look at it. Yeah. And it's hard for you to grasp that when you're trying to make payroll or you're trying to feed your kids, right?
Yeah.
But there has to be an element of that you're planning out that future, and it's going to be a rocky road. It was funny because someone posted a picture of an up close picture of like a pavement, and I forget what they were talking about, but it was a visual for me, and I was like, you know what? When you look at an asphalt road way down into the asphalt, it is very jagged. It is very rocky, right? It is not smooth at all.
Right.
But when you're driving down an asphalt road, it's very smooth.
Right.
And that's, I think, the difference in the perspective as a business owner. You have to like understand that when you're down in it, man, there's days that you just want to wash your hands of the whole thing and
Why
go get a job at Walmart.
Yeah,
right?
why am I doing this?
Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
But you have to be able to conceptualize it on the long term.
Yeah.
You have to, and there's a very good illustration that Donald uses with an airplane. You have to keep cash in that airplane. That's the fuel for your business. Right. You have to have the cash. And for some, I mean, there is good debt in business, right?
Yes.
Like there's good debt.
Yes.
When it comes to running a business. And so, but you have to have that cash to pay your operating expenses so you can focus on the engines, which are the marketing and sales. They're going to make the airplane take off, right?
Yeah.
And that when I saw that illustration, I was like, man, that's great. That's awesome.
Listen, one of the things that I'll tell you going from corporate to small business that I've really looked at, and again, probably something I honed in big business and bringing it into small business is not being emotional.
Yeah.
And people sometimes view that as a lack of empathy or, not understanding or whatever. But if you can take emotion out of decision making and really look at it factual for what it is. Like, this is what it is. I've got to, listen, I can go home and cry about it. I can go home and tell 50 of my friends about it. It's not going to fix the issues.
Well, and typically the emotion comes from the story you're telling yourself.
Yes.
Right.
And your identity, again, being challenged in that whole business.
But like you, maybe you're upset at an employee for doing something.
Yep.
But it's because of the story of what happened that you're telling yourself. So one of the greatest things I got out of this challenge I did in December was, okay, let's back up. What are the facts of what's going on here with no emotion? What are just the facts?
Yep.
Right? This would be an impossible task for the Congress to do, right? Because they can't do anything without the emotion. But what are the tasks or what are the facts of the situation?
Right.
Now, what is the story that I want to tell? What is the story of the situation that would help me get what I want, right? And the difference between getting what you want and being right is hard for a lot of people as well.
And a fine line.
A very fine line.
Right.
But those kind of exercises to me are invaluable because, I mean, like you said, you have to take the emotion out. But to do that, you have to have the right perspective.
Sure.
And you have to have the right mentality. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to do that.
Well, listen, when you make decisions on an emotional basis, you're going to make the wrong decision 95% of the time. I mean, it's going to be super high. And the problem of that is when you're a small business owner, you're not just latched into this is my identity attached to this business. You're also latched into I'm responsible for these people. Yeah. I'm helping these people pay their bills by keeping them employed here and keeping the business open and everything else. And that weight is powerful. That weight carries that emotion to the surface, unfortunately, because you're sitting there trying to go, listen, I want to make the right decisions here, but I know the right decision may affect Sally or the right decision may affect Michael over here or whatever. And so when we talk about these resources on these pages where people can be back and forth and open, that networking of having somebody who's not in the fire with you that can kind of step back and say, listen, man, I've been there doing that and this is how I'd have done it different, or this is how I did it and got through it. Yeah. And they can say it to you and guide it to you without the emotion so that you can kind of back away from it. I've always found that emotion puts you right in the fire. Right. But when you can step back, I mean, if you're in the fire, listen, if I build a little fire pit that's 4 foot by 4 foot and I'm standing in it, it's an inferno. Yeah. But when I step away from it and I realize, listen, this ain't near as big as I thought here. This ain't going to take a lot of water, to put this thing out here.
I'm going to send you one of these copies. So this is the new book, Business Made Simple.
Okay.
Some of this stuff. So what I love about this book, you can read the whole thing through it, but it's set up as a daily deal. There's 60 days. Yeah. Right. One of the things, so it's how do you become a value-driven professional? Whether you own a business or you work in a business, how do you become a value-driven professional? And this is one of the things. How do you handle emotion? Yeah. How do you handle conflict? Yep. Right. And this deals with leadership, sales, marketing, management, personal productivity. I mean, I read a lot.
Yeah, and I've watched you post a bunch of stuff out of that book as well too.
Yeah, this book is fantastic.
Yeah, so when you're in the emotion, and I think I said this on my last podcast, when you're in the emotion and your house is on fire, so to say, the emotion will lead you to grab the water hose and water the flower bed. Mm-hmm. It doesn't prioritize well for you when you're emotional about those decisions. But where you can step back and go, listen, man, let's put this water where it really is needed. And let's do it with the understanding that, hey, I get that if I don't react, this thing burns to the ground. What's the worst thing that happens if I don't react? It's boom, it's flattened. It's not here. It doesn't exist anymore. But if I do put it on there, it's a lot better if I do it a lot earlier that I stepped away and saw it, as opposed to now in the middle, 3/4 of the way through the burn, whatever that looks like. And so a lot of businesses are facing that right now, especially a lot of small businesses. They're facing those decisions of going, listen, man, I can't make it 30 more days, 60 more days, 90 more days. But the reality of that is they're in that moment. They're not looking far enough down the road to set a pathway for, listen, again.
Well, and that's what I did in March when I got my head cut off, right? Yeah. I was emotional. Like I have a 18-month-old and I have a baby on the way. Right. And I was like, damn, I got it. Like, what am I going to do? Right. And then it just took a few months for me to realize, you know what, like you got to, here's the plan.
Yep.
Here's what you got to do.
Yep.
You don't focus on the monthly revenue right now. You focus on the daily activities. If I can speak once a week, whether it's your podcast or a webinar or in these Facebook groups, if I can do a 20, 30-minute speech a week in front of 20 business owners, I will pick up a client a week.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of saying I got to get to X number of dollars a month. Well, me thinking about X number of dollars a month isn't going to help me get there.
Yeah, and it's just going to add more pressure.
You have to keep reverse engineering it, right?
Yep.
And get to that. Okay, I know that for I'm making these numbers up. 20 businesses I talk to, I'll get one client.
Yep.
Right? And I need 10 clients recurring revenue to live comfortably.
Right.
Then I can take my business to the next step and grow and do the things I want to do where I can take, like my ideal goal, I don't know how I'm going to do this yet, but what I want to do is for every business that I coach with Business Made Simple, I want that to cover the cost of one of these kids without a dad. Yeah. Right? Like build this in so that hey, if I hire Dallas to coach my business,
it's going here.
He's also going to help a kid that doesn't have a dad that is and it'll be some sort of application process where, they have to qualify. Yeah. You've got to show me that you really want this. I'm not doing this for charity. I'm not going to waste my time with people that just on a whim.
Yeah.
We're going to find kids that really want to do it. And so that's where I'm at now.
Yeah.
It's not, and so then also when you get to that point, even though we're not, because of my decisions last year, we're not where we should be right now. Right. But when you take yourself out of the equation too, and you start thinking about the big picture of what you want, and then you take the actions to get there, it changes everything.
Yeah, I think if you can step away from 2020, when we cross over here into 2021, and you can step away from 2020 and see positive. Yeah. Because a lot of the times people are just like, dude, this was the crappiest year ever. I'm glad it's gone, everything else. I've told people here at the podcast that 2020, if you survived 2020 as a business, it made you a better business
I would agree with that. And turn off the news.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like nothing, you're not going to hear anything good on the news when it comes to your business. No. So turn it off
and the news,
keep your head down.
The news really for us isn't really relative to local anyway.
Right.
I mean, most of what's being bled down is national, and it's sensationalized, and it's led for the sensationalization. News has not become news. News has become
it's
tabloid almost.
Yeah. Well, and politics in general, especially at the national level, it's all theater.
Yeah,
at this point, right? Yeah. They're all spending money like drunken Indians. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But locally, that's the thing I'm thankful for Jim's page.
Yeah.
Is most business owners are too busy in their business to pay attention to the stuff that the local government is doing.
Absolutely.
Right. And by the time they find out about it, it's too late.
Yeah.
It's already been done.
Yeah.
I mean, you have some of these things they're wanting to pass now, like the whole defining family. I'm sorry, but that is not the role of the government at any level to define the word family.
Yep.
Right. I mean, especially at a local level. And so, Jim's group is great because it's giving businesses a place to A, get the information in a timely manner, B, talk about the information, and figure out, okay, what are we going to do, right? I mean, it is asinine to me that at a time when businesses are literally hanging on by a thread, the city of College Station is talking about spending $100,000 on bushes in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
That is insane to me.
Yeah.
And we don't know if we're going to have a full football season again next year.
Right.
Another 50% occupied football season, and this town is going to have some major problems.
Yeah.
Major. I mean, we already have major problems from this year. But you put another year of, I was talking to a business owner last June, right, when So when A&M did virtual new student conferences, no summer camps for athletics, no fire schools, all of those things in the summer, I think we added up, it was 300,000 people that did not come to College Station for those 3 months.
Yeah.
So let's say 300,000 people, and let's say they spend, by the time they get a hotel, food, whatever, let's say they're spending an average of $100.
That's pretty,
which is low.
I was going to say, which hotel are you staying at?
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm just being conservative,
I'm with
right?
you. Make the numbers easier too here. Yeah.
I mean, that's $30 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, that's $100.
Yeah. On just a season.
Yeah. And they were here for one day and they spent $100.
Right.
So we can legitimately say the city probably lost $100 to $200 million of revenue.
Yeah.
And all those sales tax dollars aren't coming to the city this year.
Right.
And so that's why when you see these people saying, stay home, don't open your business, those are typically people that have government jobs or healthcare jobs or whatever, that you can say that. But what's going to happen?
We're in it together, people that I was talking about earlier. Yeah.
So Josh Ben, I think, was the one that had a very good post that said the reason you see this is you have two different categories of people.
Absolutely.
You have a category of people that have maybe they're a teacher, and all these are great people, right? They work for the university, but they have a different mindset and a different perspective because they're not missing a paycheck.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's easy for them to say, stay home. But here's what's going to happen. And this is why this isn't a 2020 issue. This is why this is a 2023 issue, probably at least still, right? If everyone gets the vaccination tomorrow and everything goes away next week, right? If that happens, I think this has really big economic impacts all the way through 2023, maybe even a little further. And that's because the sales tax and the property tax and all those tax dollars don't impact these people that are right now saying, stay home, stay home, stay home. This isn't going to hit them until next year.
Right.
Economically. Right. And for governments, I mean, they can print the money and make that go a little longer. Right. But you're talking about some serious long-term ramifications. And the good news for business owners is you were the first to get hit. You'll be the first to get out.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're the front line of this economically.
Yep.
And that's why I keep telling people, it's like, look, keep your head down, focus on what you can control, focus on what you can do, but stay in tune with, especially what the local government's doing. I mean, we don't have a whole lot we can do at the national level, but we can control what's being spent and what's being done here. You know, you see, it kills me as a marketing guy. I'm like, I saw some of them talking about, hey, let's encourage people to have a staycation. What?
Yeah,
we're gonna spend $1 million on this campaign. Just give me $500,000 and burn the other $500,000, and we'll, anyway, it does blow my mind sometimes. But yes, you bring up these groups, and I think those are super, super valuable. If you're a business owner, you should definitely get both those. I'm going to start another group here pretty soon that we're just going to really focus on marketing and communications. Everyone can share what they're doing. I'll share some things more in depth because I feel like I don't want to overstep my boundaries in some of these groups that aren't my group.
You're pretty active in Jim's page. I mean, you have a lot to say in those pages. Not saying that negatively. I mean,
when you put your name on the ballot,
you
learn a lot.
Yeah, you've been there, done that.
I ran for council 3 or 4 years ago, whatever that year was. It was 2016, I guess.
Yep.
And or 2017. 2017. I mean, you learn a whole lot more about the underbelly.
Yeah, the backside.
You talk about Walmart, you learn about the politics.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know that I'll ever be a politician because I'm too blunt.
Too honest.
Right? Yeah, I'm too honest about it. Like, dude,
are you able to beep this while we're recording this live and sending it out to the rest of College Station? You know, because
I mean, I see the things that they talk about that they consider to be problems, and I think about all the cities that would love to have that problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, the issue is that you've got a lot of people that they're anti-growth no matter what it is.
Right.
And
which is a perception, when you say anti-growth, is a perception of anti-business.
It is.
Right.
And a lot of it is.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you talk about the irony to me is that one city councilman is like the biggest tree person in the world, right? And his policy single-handedly cut down more trees in this town than anybody else. When the whole lawsuit happened with Walmart, where Scott and White is now, that company came in after that, and they just cut down all the trees.
Yeah, listen, I was a part. So listen,
were you with Walmart during that time? Were you part of that?
So,
oh man, this is great.
I wasn't. Let's back this up. There's a lot of stuff behind this that people didn't know. So I was with Walmart at that time. I wasn't running one of the local ones. I think I was in Madisonville at that time, running Madisonville. And that corner came up. And people's perception off of that was that we Walmart were in on that. Now, let's keep in mind, let me back up and give some actual facts here. The facts was that there was a business that was wanting to buy that. And it was going to get flipped to us, but it wasn't us. We were basically going to work through this business in order to acquire that land. That was going to be where we were going to relocate College Station. That's right there on Texas, and we were going to move it over that way. And unfortunately, we already knew we were in for a battle. And there's no doubt about that. I mean,
you probably get that a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
the traffic you're going to have.
Listen, there were people in the community across the way that went and took pictures of the back of buildings. And listen, on any given day behind a Walmart, you can find a stack of pallets that might be knocked over, a bale that's broken open, and everything else. And so it's just like anything else. You can frame up something to make it look as bad as you want to make it look, right? And then, so while we're sitting in the back,
nobody does that anymore, though, right? Nobody did that in 2020.
There's no such thing as framing something to fit your narrative. That never happens. So we sat in the back. We didn't wear our name tags. We didn't do any of this stuff. And we just sat there and we listened. Now, keeping in mind, we knew that it's not Walmart, but the perception publicly is it's Walmart. And it was skewering us. And it didn't lead well because the lead into that conversation was that company that was trying to acquire it was already zoned correctly, basically led out with a letter of, you're going to do this or we're going to sue you, which that didn't start the meeting very well. And it definitely didn't settle real well with the people that were there. And I totally get that. And we're sitting back there going, oh my gosh, like what have we gotten into? And then when everything kind of came to be, it was the company kind of stepped there and go, listen, we're out. Like, this is not going well. This publicly isn't going well. I mean, there's a guy that got up there and he showed all the pictures up on the big screen and basically tells everybody, this is what's going to be in your backyard if they come over here. And nobody wanted to hear about sales dollars and, what the tax implications were and how that was going to bring more money and where they were going to be located. Nobody wanted to hear any of that.
Well, see, that's you like the story brand thing, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't a big enough problem. When you talk about tax revenue to most people, that doesn't address their problem.
Well, and for the city, it wasn't something that was a do or die kind of deal either way. So, and for us, seeing how that was led into and handled by that company at that time, and then we feed that information back, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there going, we need to disjoint from this. This does not need to be something we need to be a part of. And the last thing we want to do in a community was come in with a bruise already in the community as to how we're handling things. And so, it was ugly. It came down to a vote, and it came down to a vote where one person broke the tie, and it didn't break the tie in our favor. And we had to report back what we saw there and all that other stuff. And it wasn't fun to be a part of, even though I wasn't wearing my name tag, and most of the people in that room didn't even know I was sitting in there, nor the other representatives from Walmart at that time were sitting in there. But, we looked at it and just went, wow, this is crazy. This has been handled wrong. This is not where we want to rest as a company. Fast forward down the road, then all of a sudden here's Scott and White. Not knock on Scott and White, man. That was necessary, I guess, in the company. I just find it ironic now that people were worried about pallets and bales being broken, and now you get helicopters and ambulances running through all the time and everything else. But there wasn't any squawking about that because it wasn't, Scott and White wasn't being portrayed in the fit the narrative that Walmart was at that point. So it wasn't fun to be a part of, but yeah. Well, I was in that meeting when all of that took place, and quite honestly, it was probably for the best that it worked out that way, because we could have carried that history and that legacy on, and that would have never gone away. To think that, Walmart got in here, but they threatened to sue the city and blah blah blah. It was nuts. And so that city council part, though, that you're talking about. And you can see it on Jim's page where you see people going, if there were more small business owners sitting on that council, then this would be a completely different conversation. And
we're all too busy.
You and I know that's true, right?
Yeah.
We know that there are people in there who, again, have been the people who have been paid by an entity, not being paid off by an entity, being paid by an entity, meaning they're collecting a paycheck from something that's been around for a long time that's really not even being impacted right now. So if you're, like you referred to as a professor, and you're collecting your retirement from A&M, well, that hasn't changed, and A&M's not going to crater and go underground and all that other stuff. But yet, if that were the case, then we wouldn't be having conversations about trees and sidewalks and, you know, bike trails and all this other stuff. We'd be having conversations about preservation. And
you know, the funniest thing to me about the bike, so I don't know how many millions of dollars over the past 20 years we've spent on bike lanes. And then people finally start riding bicycles around town,
right? And
they complain because the yellow bikes are ugly around town,
right?
That blew my mind.
Yeah.
I was like, how many millions of dollars do we spend to build these bike lanes? People are finally using the damn bike lanes.
Yeah.
And now we're going to get rid of the bikes that people use.
And listen,
bike lanes.
Prior to
it's crazy.
Prior to COVID, I get it. Prior to COVID, one of the knocks on College Station is that we don't have that transportation kind of outdoorsy image that Austin has, right? And so you're trying to build something there. I get that and I understand that, but in an environment where, you know, I've said that towns, cities, everything are built on small businesses' backs. Yeah. You know, before there was a Walmart, before there was a Target, before there was an H-E-B, there was small businesses here in town. And those small businesses set the foundation for larger businesses to come to town. And then once we get larger businesses in, the understanding needs to be that the preservation of those small businesses still need to be in play. Small businesses, while a lot of them will say, look, this big business came in and took my revenue or took some of my customers or whatever the case may be, you'd be surprised at how much those corporate America businesses really positively impact small businesses in town because they bring more jobs in, they bring more people in, they bring more potential revenue. And again, it's up to that small business to tap into that and to find that avenue or that vein that they need in order to drive that business back into them.
Well, I think you mentioned earlier, you don't want to be the biggest in town, right?
Absolutely.
There are holes. There are people that don't want to deal with the biggest in town. They'd rather deal with you just from a size standpoint.
Well, because they're a number.
Yeah,
because they feel like they're a number instead of feeling like I'm a person in this operation. I'm customer number 1, customer number 3,000.
But then the big boxes, right? They cater to the people that don't care. They're willing to have lower level of service. Yep. You know, one of the things I learned from Warren, we were talking about earlier, there's only 3 things you can control, right?
Yep.
Price, product, and service.
Yep.
You can't have the lowest price. Nordstrom can't give you the lowest price to give you the service and the products they give you.
Right.
Walmart gives you a lower price because they reduce the product quality and they reduce the service quality, right? Like, now the self-checkout lanes and stuff, it's much better than you used to. I remember as a kid, like, you just knew when you checked out at Walmart, there was going to be 4 people in line in front of you. It was the whole joke, right? They've got two registers open. You've dealt with these jokes,
man,
right?
I tell my wife I'm waiting for my 1040 to come from checking myself out so I can claim the taxes on that. Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, for me, and I don't want to sit here and talk about politics all day, but the government's role is not to take care of us.
Yeah.
Like, that's not their role.
Yeah. Don't feed me money.
Especially at the local level, right? Like, we do not need a bunch of retired folks telling us how to raise our kids and what we can and can't do.
Who can live where.
Which is, by the way, only going to result in more lawsuits that we all get to pay for.
Oh, yeah.
But, most people our age and younger, we're busy. Mm-hmm. We're running a business. I've got a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old. I don't have time to stay on top of this like the groups that want total control of the entire city. Yeah. And what kills me about the College Station stuff specifically is, I mean, you're talking about a couple of neighborhoods that are financially holding the rest of the city hostage. Yeah. That's really what it comes down to. I mean, I wish we had the districts like Brian has, to where there's someone on council from every part of the city. Yeah. I think that's been a big problem for the city council the past 20 years.
Well, yeah, you can't say that.
A couple of neighborhoods.
Again, in that same deal, talking about the emotional tie into something. If I live in a neighborhood that's up for question, or that's up for discussion when it comes to city council stuff, it's pretty hard for me to just back away from that and go, listen, I'm not going to tie into this because I'm a part of it. I'm going to make the best decision based on stepping away and looking at big picture. So it's easy to get tied up in the middle of it because you may be right in the middle of it, right? Or you may be a part of what's right on, sitting on the council's agenda or whatever it may be.
And that being said, you have to have a plan based on if things go your way politically, or they don't go your way politically, because you can't control it.
Well, and the thing you got to also understand here, I got a relative that's on a city council in a pretty decent sized city, and they get skewered no matter what decision they're going to make. Good, bad, ugly. There's always going to be somebody on there. The social warriors are going to take to Twitter, and they're going to make sure that they are heard, right? And so, but again, this intestinal fortitude that we were discussing with Cunha about, stepping up there and saying, listen, we don't need to be talking about this. This is not it again, city council, if you're listening, my reference earlier of your house on fire and putting the hose to the garden is probably more relative now than any other time with our city council. Now, is that coming to light? Well, we were just talking about this breakfast that's getting ready to be had and have a discussion about $400,000 that's now, appeared to be able to use on the grant program to help small businesses and everything else. And then we were kind of laughing about it, saying how far is $400,000 going to get? How many businesses are going to be able to survive on that $400,000 where, again, if we were front side on this, that 400,000's been there and there's more. And unfortunately, it's going to take better insight and better understanding to know that it's going to take more. And so, but again, who's been the bad guys in all of this, so
the problem is, we were talking about this before too, is that I don't feel like we have anybody that really thinks outside of the box.
No.
Right? Like there's no creative thought process going on here. But I mean, Jim nailed it in his the post he's been making the past few weeks is we've got to get the vaccine out, because that really is the only way that we're going to get consumer confidence back.
Absolutely.
People are going to be comfortable going to concerts and stores and living life again.
Yeah.
Right. And the thing that's frustrated me about the COVID stuff is that, my parents they have health issues that make them a risk.
Yeah.
Right. But so we're very careful making sure that we, sanitize our hands, we wear the mask, whatever, right? And but for us, I mean, I'm fat, but I guess for me it's like I'm not trying to be careful how I say this, but I'm trying to think through how I'm saying So you can't like save your life by ending your life. You can't save a life by quit living.
Yeah.
Right. Like
lock it all up.
You can't just lock it all up.
Right.
And the frustrating thing for me is that people that pretend that this is a black and white issue that we can solve, it is not. I've got a friend whose 13-year-old nephew killed himself because he kept hearing that this was the new normal. Mm-hmm. Right. That in the note he said, if this is the new normal, I don't want to live like this. Yeah. And that is an issue that we're not talking about. I know 4 people. One local business person, right? Mm-hmm. I know 4 people who have tried to commit suicide this year.
Yep.
3 successfully. I know 3 people who have died of COVID. Mm-hmm. These are equal issues, but we're not discussing that. And that's the problem, is that it's not about profits over people. Right. This is not about, I'm not saying businesses have to stay open to make money. I'm saying businesses have to stay open for people to live.
Yeah.
Like this is not a capitalism. Hey, screw everybody if they die. Let's all make money. It's not about money.
Yeah.
It is about, and it's never about money. Money is just a number.
Right.
But money gives you freedom.
We can print more of it.
Yeah. God, yes. I mean, and that's the big issue that no one's talking about either. Right. I think by next year, 75% of all the money in circulation will have been printed in the last 18 months. But that's scary as hell. But what I'm saying is that you can't quit living to save your life. Like there has to be some semblance of like intestinal fortitude, right? Mm-hmm. Like look, be careful.
Yeah.
But
if you're worried, stay home.
Here's the thing too. If the masks are the answer, right? as I sit here coughing.
Appropriately timed.
Right? If the masks are the answer, which, by the way, having allergies in Central Texas during COVID is a real pain in the ass.
You're going to get everybody looking at you like you're crazy.
But like people don't. I hear this comment all the time, like, "Oh, you're anti-masker." I'm not anti-mask.
Right.
I wear a mask everywhere I go.
Yep.
Right. We're here together. We're 6 feet apart. We're doing our thing.
Yep.
But like, you would get a lot more buy-in for masks if you said, "Okay, football games are open, businesses are open.
Yep.
If you wear your mask."
Yep.
People aren't going to buck that near as much.
No.
But to tell them you have to wear a mask and we're shutting everything down,
yeah,
that's where the issues come in.
Well, you can see it. You can see the frustration with people as this continues to linger on. You know, you talked about the mental health side of that, right? Yeah. The mental health side, you're starting to see a lot of the pushback. Listen,
and these kids' mental health.
Yeah.
My God, we are the long-term ramifications of what we're doing to our kids right now with these virtual schools for like 6-year-olds and stuff.
Yeah.
Dude, they're like, one of my good friends did his PhD dissertation on screen time in kids. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about the other day, like this is going to be catastrophic for this generation.
Yeah.
Because what it does is it impacts their frontal cortex, which is where all your critical thinking and your problem solving skills get developed. Mm-hmm. That brain never develops. So God help us all in 20 years when these kids are adults and have even less critical thinking skills than the young adults now.
Well,
right?
it'll get, there's no doubt in 20 years, this will get armchair quarterback till the cows come home, and how it could have been handled different and everything else. Same deal. You can look back at the 1918 Spanish flu and how it was handled. Masks were worn at that time. And then it's, if we look back on it now, we could probably reevaluate it then. And some of the,
but I think the problem is now though, I hate to interrupt you, but the problem now is that people are saying it now though.
Right.
This isn't necessarily, we're going to wait 10. There are people
years
saying this
road.
now that this is going to be an issue,
right?
And they just get buried as, well, you're not listening to science.
Well, because,
no, it's just there's another factor that has different science involved that we're not paying attention to.
But those people that are saying that are falling in, like, you've got this huge category over here that still believes all this needs to happen, and they're a very small percent over here. So it's not tipping the scale back. But
in this category, abuses and berates this category, so there's less people that will stay.
Yeah, because if you're not doing it, then you're obviously an anti-masker.
Right. You're anti-science. You're a Trumpster.
Yeah. But as time goes on, those scales are starting to manipulate just by nature of, look, I'll do my part here, but I'm not doing my part for the next 5 years. Yeah. I'm not wearing a mask for the next 5 years. And so this slowly is kind of starting to come this way. So one thing I do want to talk about is you talked earlier about being busy and not having the time to handle things and do things. Listen, something recently happened here where, the county judge, there was information that was going to get out there that the bars we're going to shut back down, and the restaurants were going to go back down on their percents, right? And that information got put out, and it got put out to a bunch of the small business owners, along to everybody in town. I mean, it was all over the place. And you really had these people, not just the small, people always think that, okay, well, we're going to shut the bars down on these small businesses or whatever. The people tend to think that those are the ones that are going to get outraged by it. But that's really not the case, because as they see closure after closure after closure and no long-term solution behind that other than let's just close it down so we can say we did it. Now all of a sudden, even at that level, the county judge here, that it was rumored before that meeting happened that was going to be initiated again. And then people showed up. And again, one of those people that showed up, took the podium, was Sam Smith. And he got up there and questioned, like, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? Because the thought was going to be that was a done deal. Yeah. Like, it was going to happen, and you didn't have any say on it. Sam goes up there afterwards, and I don't want to tell Sam's story, but, afterwards, there's a conversation that happens between them, and you come to find out that the judge is over here with a different opinion than what was publicly being portrayed on him. And then the decision's made, like, we're not going to do this, And so, again, you're never going to please everybody. But at that same point, if I'm a bar owner, man, why am I always the bad guy?
You're never going to please everybody, but the government shouldn't be making those decisions for anybody.
Yes.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's what those of us that own businesses and understand what it's like to help other businesses. I mean, for me, I have one business partner, right? So we don't have employees in what we do yet.
Right.
But I work with a ton of businesses. Yeah. Right? Like our work impacts these businesses. Yep. Right. And when we lose 70% of our business, in a matter of 3 weeks, right? Like we did in the spring, you start having a real big perspective of, okay, what would be the next excuse for them to do this?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the overarching issue is we've become a society that puts safety, ultimate safety, ahead of everything else. Mm-hmm. And you can never be 100% safe. That's just the reality, right?
Our government has become helicopter parents to the society.
And they think that we need them to make the decisions for us when, and hell, part of it, a lot of people probably do, because we've systematically done this for decades now.
You've taken people's ability to make good decisions away.
Exactly. Yeah. We don't teach people to make decisions.
Yeah.
We teach them what decisions to make. Yeah. And that's a really scary thing for the future.
And that is also sitting right knee deep in the middle of social media where, what's popular, what's not popular, and it's fed down into everybody. The thing that I would say on these businesses and everything else, and with that judge making a counter decision as to what was made, is it was the first insight to hope for small businesses. It was the first deal to go, listen, somebody's finally starting to understand this. Finally, we're starting to see somebody that's working for us as opposed to what feels like working against us. You really want to see what the underbelly of all this looks like? Listen, you said that summer camps goes away and you go down, so you lose 70%, right? We lose 85% in April. If you had taken, and let's just average that, let's just go back to the 70% number. If we'd gone all the way through the town and told everybody it was going to affect everybody negatively 70%, I mean, everybody. You're getting paid by your corporate America job to sit at home and Zoom and do all that other stuff. Listen, we wouldn't be sitting here even having this discussion because you'd probably have a riot going on at city council.
I posted the other day that I think that if you were a government entity, that any industry that you put at 50%, let's just say that you say 50% occupancy.
Yeah.
Right? You get 50% of your pay.
Yeah.
For the length of time that's in order.
Yep.
If you put any industry at 0%, so if you shut down the bars, you get 0% until they open up.
Yeah.
You'd end it real quick.
Find out how quickly that affects people.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing with Congress, right? It's easy for you guys getting $250,000 a year or whatever you've given yourself a raise to again this year. Mm-hmm. But you should have to live with the same. And the second part of that is if you say, let's just say after Biden comes in, they do some sort of attempt at shutting down for 3 weeks or something.
Yeah.
States will never go for it. But let's just say that they did. Okay, cool. For the period that any industry is closed, you get zero pay and you cannot, your campaign funds are frozen. So no backdoor.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. No little side.
No little side hustles.
Funding, all that stuff.
No insider trading.
Yeah.
Your campaign funds are frozen and your salary is zero until the lowest rung. So bars are the easy target. The only reason bars are the easiest target, by the way, is because they have state agencies that regulate them more than most.
Well, which is crazy.
So they have consequences for standing up.
You would think in that world, because they're that highly regulated, that they're not on the target list because you already have regulation that's running through.
It's one of the few, especially in Texas, that the state can come in and say, if you buck us on this, we will take away your liquor license.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Barry Ivins he's on top of this with his bars, right?
Yep.
I've had many discussions with Barry. But the fact that the biggest thing is, and I know we're gonna wrap it up here pretty soon, but the biggest thing to me was the asinine policy for bar owners. Well, if you pay us, $800 or whatever, $500 and become a restaurant, then you're cool.
Yeah.
Like that to me is when someone like me that looks at all those with common sense type of mentality, that's when you lose me on the science.
Yeah.
Right. If this is, A, you don't have any studies that are tracking this that show bars and restaurants are the problem. But B, if that's the issue, then doing things like that, you lose all credibility with me.
Well, or by the way, if you go spend $75,000 on a food truck and put it in front of your business, then we'll call you a restaurant when you reach 51%. We'll move on. But again, it's most, if you're in the know, you're in the know, right? The city council has a tough job. I know we've spent a little 100%. Bit of time knocking on and everything else. And like I said, you're never going to make 100% of the people happy.
Right.
But again, if we know that the foundation for business rests squarely on the foundation of small business first, and we can let corporate America kind of work itself out because there's funding there and things that are happening and lobbying and things that those small businesses aren't really it's not available to them. It's not a part of. If we can protect the small businesses and shore that up and ensure that the money that we have right now, listen, we're real quick to move, at a federal level, we're real quick to move the ball around under the cups as we need to, right? Mm-hmm. Like, let's do it over here and just print more money and do this kind of stuff. At the local level, and it was said in one of the podcasts, I think if not anything, small businesses found out that you really probably shouldn't have your eye on federal level. You should have your eye on local level. You need to be more involved. You need to have a bigger voice. You need to understand that, again, these guys that are taking these roles on, I mean, they're servants of the community. But sometimes even the best intent servant can see something that's not the most important thing. Again, being able to step away and look at it with less emotion. Where are we burning at, and what do we need to do to help shore this up?
Well, and I think, to go back to, I absolutely agree. People should pay more attention to their local government than they do the federal government.
Yeah.
The reason they don't is what is the narrative that gets their attention every day, right? There's nothing that gets their attention on a large scale.
Absolutely.
About Crompton wanting to put $100,000 of bushes in the medians. Mm-hmm. That does not get that. That's why it's so easy for them to get that stuff through, because that narrative does not resonate with people. Mm-hmm. Whereas we're going to take your guns, we're going to outlaw abortion, we're going to whatever the big, huge, gay marriage, whatever the big emotional narratives, mm-hmm. police brutality, mm-hmm. right? Whatever the big emotional narratives are, mm-hmm. is where we give our attention. So that's why your business needs to think the same way.
Yeah.
You have to get their attention.
Well, think about this. If I just ask this question, what channel is the city council meetings broadcast on? I mean, that's a great question. Yeah. If it's local, why is it not on NBC, CBS, ABC local affiliates, right? Why is it not being broadcast directly down? And I'm not saying they're trying to hide things, but if you really want the public to be informed, you've got to give them a line of sight that is right at their front door, that isn't like, hey, we're off on, channel this, or, you got to search this particular website to get this feed, or whatever that looks like. But, again, a tough job. I don't know that I'd want to be on city council right now. I think it's a tough place to be. And again, it's easy for a lot of us to sit back and armchair quarterback a lot of that. But at that same time, when I'm in the role that I'm in, and a part of this podcast is to bring small businesses to the table, to promote them to people who are out there, maybe don't have an understanding or don't know, or need to learn more about your business, need to learn about how these entities are affecting small business here in town. What we looked at this as the opportunity to be able to help small businesses in a small way. I mean, it's great that we can come on here, but a lot of that is that when it's all said and done, the more informed our public is, the more informed our clients are, the more informed our customers are, the community is, and everything else, the more things start coming into focus. And so, when it comes to small businesses, if you're in a small business, that focus is laser. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can see 20/20 with no problem. Yep. If you're not in that business and you're somewhere outside of that, in corporate America or whatever, man, maybe you're seeing 20/40. I mean, it doesn't look the same for you, and you don't really sweat it because hey, I'm good. I'm propped up over here by these dollars and everything else. They're not in businesses where you got to kill it, drag it home, right? So, for the guys that are out there, small businesses that are out there, man, I really want to reinforce, what Dallas was saying earlier about networking, reaching back, using those resources from Facebook pages to actual business owners to guys like Dallas who's out there trying to create a roadmap of marketing to be able to help you and your business to stay focused in uncertain times. And again, you're navigating waters. I'm sure when you got into this marketing business and you started up Six Shooter that you weren't sitting there going, hey man, let's do this in a COVID atmosphere and figure out the best way to do it. Yeah. I mean, so again, it's forced you to pivot. But the one thing that I will tell you, and I touched on it and kind of got off of it a little bit, is if not anything as a small business, you've probably learned to be a better businessman through 2020 by being able to pivot and go, okay, I know that maybe what my initial priorities were and where I was focused at are maybe not the number one priorities for businesses right now. So what can I do to align myself with their need? And if you're out there and you're networking with people, you need to understand that like these Facebook pages, man, they're free. They don't cost you anything to get on. You go on there, you introduce yourself, you tell people what your business is, and you got people instantly at your fingers that if you're transparent and you're telling people, listen, man, I'm really struggling here. Can somebody help me? Bam. Here's a direct message in. Here's a reply. Here's somebody that's picking up a phone and calling you. And that we're in it together, I believe, really starts right there. It starts at that networking line.
Well, again, I go back to build trust and add value.
Yeah.
If you do those two things, it doesn't matter what your business is. That's what it comes down to, right? Build trust and add value. And the other thing I would tell you, just from as far as little tips that you can do, is beyond just having your Facebook page, right, for your business, is get involved in some of these other Facebook groups, not even just locally, right? Yeah. If you sell to schools, right, you sell a lot of merchandise to the local schools. You know, if you want to expand, get involved in these Facebook groups of schools dealing with COVID, right? There's groups. That's all they're talking about. You can provide insight into, hey, we did this at this school. They were able to raise $50,000 from it, or they were able to raise $5,000 from it, or whatever.
Yeah.
And you share these ideas, even if they don't come to you, right? Like I was watching Cobra Kai last night, and it was talking about
both watching at the same time.
Put good into the world, and good will come back.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
I'm a firm believer in that. And so when you see me on these Facebook groups and I'm giving value, yes, I'm trying to drum up business for myself as well.
Sure.
But I truly hope that something I'm giving out to for free helps you.
Yeah.
Right. There's very little. I mean, at my core, I'm a coach.
Yeah.
At my core, my wife says, if you could do anything you want to, what would you do? I'd be a baseball coach because I enjoy helping other people succeed.
Right.
That's what gives me the juice. That's what gets me fired up. And that's why as a consultant / coach, that's why I do what I do. Because when I get to see the work that I help a client put together, or I get to see them take the information I give them. And, we had a lady in the Facebook group the other day that she came to my webinar. She went and made one change to her website. In less than 2 hours, she had an appointment booked. And she was so excited, which made me so excited.
Yeah.
Right. Little things like that, they go a long way. So I would encourage you, if you're a small business owner, whatever your niche is, whatever your market is, in addition to doing your stuff, get involved in these groups and help people solve problems and share ideas, share information.
Yeah. I'm going to take that one step further, and I'm going to tell you something that I did this last year. It was at the start of this last year, and I think it was a value for me personally and hopefully for the business, but mentoring a business, going in, and this isn't a business that's doing what we're doing, but I had somebody reach out to me that started a business this last year, towards the tail end of this last year.
What a time.
They're in downtown Bryan. And they just reached back to me and said, hey, I'm starting up. I really kind of need some insight into what this is going to look like. Can we do lunch? Right. Go and sit down and have lunch with this lady. I've known her since she was a kid and walked her through, but again, kind of walking her through without being in the middle of it so that I could give her some insight that wasn't emotional or wasn't, hyped through the roof of, I'm going to open this up. This is going to be the next big thing. Right. This is the next big McDonald's, whatever, and then being able to give insight into that and her walking away going, man, these are really good things that I had not thought about. But hopefully aligning her to success long-term because she wasn't thinking about these things, that it didn't spring up on her as, oh my God, this never crossed my radar. And so those of you that have been in business for a long time, that you've been doing and networking for a long time, find a business to reach out to and mentor. Share some of the lows, share some of your highs, share some of those things that they're going to cross.
And be honest.
Yeah.
Be honest. We go through a lot of crap.
Yeah, exactly.
And people feel when they get to that crap of their own, they're the only ones going through it.
Yeah.
And I promise you, everyone's been through it. A lot of people are going through it.
Yep.
We put our highlights on social media.
Yeah, we do.
Right?
Yeah,
and so then I think that's a big part of the suicide issue we have in this country. because especially with kids, my God, I can't imagine going through junior high with social media. But, you know, we all are dealing with crap.
Yeah.
We all have got our issues going on. And now more than ever, I think you just have to be honest about it and put it out there. And also, people love to work with someone that's transparent.
Yeah.
Right? When I come in here and tell you I lost 70% of my business, okay, you said 85% of April, right?
Yep.
We're all dealing with it.
Yeah.
And you know, some of us are going to change our lifestyles. Some of us are going to have to change, you know, maybe the house we live in. Or but you can't put your identity in that, like what you said earlier, right? Yeah. We're all here for a very short amount of time. Yeah. Very, very short amount of time.
Blip on the map.
And so the other thing, you said something like that made me think of this that I didn't mention earlier. When it comes to marketing, most people do focus on the ads and the message on that, and you have to do that.
Sure.
But you also have to focus on your numbers and the right numbers. Most businesses, I find, have no idea what their acquisition cost is. Some people don't even know what that means, right? So I'll use the example because I just did this last night for a senior living community. But what we figured up for them is that every appointment that we book is worth $12,000. Now, how do we come up with that? Well, because we know that the person that moves into their facility is, for round numbers, $5,000 a month.
Yep.
Okay. So for 12 months, that person is worth $60,000 a year.
Yep.
Your close ratio is 25%. So you close 1 out of 4. So if we book you 10 appointments, right? Then, or we'll say 8 for round numbers. Right. We book you 8 appointments. You're going to close 2 of them.
Yep.
And that's worth $120,000. So $120,000 divided by 8, that's how much each appointment is worth to you.
Right.
And every business has this formula, but very few people understand how to implement that formula.
Yeah.
So that you know, hey, if Google ads work for you, great. What you're doing to bring them in doesn't matter. What you have to know is, what is every email address worth to you? What is every phone number worth to you? What is every appointment worth to you? Yeah. Right. And we focus on appointments. Like when I work with a client, I don't deal with all the other stuff a whole lot. I want to know, what is an appointment worth to you? Yeah. Because we're going to do everything we can to get that value higher. Right. And once we start booking you more appointments, then we will help you with closing. Right. So if your first issue is you need more tours, you need more appointments, great. But beyond that, then we say, okay, well, how can we get your close ratio up? Because those are the two things. But knowing those numbers, I find most businesses have no idea what those numbers look like.
Yeah. So, and this is a great segue to the end here. So, you know, people who've had an opportunity to sit here and listen to you talk about your marketing firm, and we'll say marketing / coaching firm, because I really like the word coaching. I mean, coaching has so many levels and it resonates with so many people. And a lot of times when people are just looking at the term marketing, it's a little bit overwhelming. But when you're looking at coaching, it's somebody that's going to guide, it's going to lead, it's going to lend in experience, it's going to kind of move you through the process of development. And so I think that's the value that Dallas brings with his leadership and running 6-shooter marketing and giving him an opportunity to reach back to you. And I mean, you said it earlier, you know, you're not in there to go, listen, I'm not talking to you unless you're putting money in my pocket. But also understanding I'm not doing it, you know, as a charity case either on every case. I'm sitting here looking at it going, let me poke this book open just a little bit to kind of show you what I know and what I can do for you. And then I'll open a little wider as we continue through this process.
And my theory is I will give you the what.
Yeah.
Like we did a webinar again yesterday. I went through an hour long about the story brand framework.
Yep. I'm
giving you the information.
Right.
All I'm charging you for is if you want me to coach you to do yours.
Right.
Or you want me to do it for you.
The implementation,
right? I'll give you the information.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm going to start doing one on the 10 characteristics of a value-driven professional.
Yeah.
Right. Where we can analyze your different parts of your professionalism.
Right.
We're going to do the Hero on a Mission workshop very soon, where it helps you create your vision, and then what do you need to do every single day to get there.
Yeah.
I do a ton of stuff for free because if you think about a sales funnel, the top of the sales funnel is curiosity.
Right.
If you don't build curiosity about your business, the rest of the sales funnel goes away.
Right.
And so for me, it's a double positive.
Yeah.
Right. where I give you information that I hope will help you succeed.
Right.
If I never hear from you again, I truly hope that information I give you will help you succeed.
Yeah.
If you want me to help you, great.
Yeah.
But if not, you've got information. And I think that's the biggest thing. And that's why when you go back to the college argument, right? College used to have the monopoly on information.
Right.
And they do not anymore.
Yeah.
And that's going to be, to me, the biggest flip in the next 20, 30, 40 years is it's going to be harder and harder for them to hold that information down.
Yeah.
And again, in these groups like engineers,
keep value to that.
Keep the value, right? Again, to me, the biggest value of college is beginning to build your network. I wish I had understood that earlier in my college career.
Right.
I had a buddy, Alan, and everybody used to make fun of him because he would go to these career fairs as a freshman. Again, his dad told him to do this, I'm sure. Right. Somebody told him to do this.
Yeah.
There was no way in hell he was getting an internship as a freshman. But guess what happened his junior year? He knew every recruiter in the room.
Yeah.
Right? He had his pick. And that's people aren't willing to put in that time and build those relationships a lot of time. And that's what you got to do.
Well, and if you found yourself in a situation where you're struggling, or you found yourself in a situation where you kind of flatten the curve, I guess, as far as the growth at your business, impacting that by someone who has insight into the networking, insight into the marketing, insight into, meeting your bike to the path to be able to put you in line with where you're trying to get to.
Well, and taking those theories and putting them into the process.
Right.
Putting them into a system. Nick Saban, he talks about the process.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why Nick Saban in Alabama kick ass and take names every year. They may not win the national title every year.
Yeah, but they're going to be in the hunt.
But they're going to be in the top 5
Yep.
every year.
Yep.
And that's what your business has to do.
Yep.
Right? You're not going to be the best every year.
Right.
Or every month.
And I think the other part that you probably bring to the table is that honesty. Yeah. That transparency, that kind of stuff.
I'm honest.
Well, a lot of
sometimes
times,
brutally.
Yeah, a lot of times you're going to find the marketers that are out there trying to market to businesses, telling them what they want to hear. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, some of the best marketing firms are going to be the ones that are going to tell you maybe what you don't want to hear, or that you've been ignoring that whole time, and knowing, like, listen, until you clear this hurdle, none of this other stuff is going to matter. But
tell them their baby's ugly. That's what it is.
Somebody that's out of the emotional equation of that, who can look into it and address it honestly and transparently, sometimes helps just reopen that vision. And again, like I said, focus it back to 2020 here. So that's a terrible number to use, I guess, but
hindsight really is 2020 now.
If you can sit there and look at that and have a different perspective, I've watched person after person after person who has communication with people who bring value, and their response is always, man, I had a great meeting sitting down with X and they told me about this, and I learned about this, and these were things that I weren't thinking about. You can be that person. If you're mentoring a business out, you can be that person that's X, and if you don't know who that person is, then you've got businesses like Six Shooter Marketing that's out there that can be that guide for you. It costs them nothing to reach out to you, right? I mean, and if they're going to reach out to you, tell them how they get a hold of you if they need to touch base with you and they're interested in having a conversation.
Best way is to shoot me an email, Dallas@sixshootermarketing.com. That's the number 6, Dallas@sixshootermarketing.com. You can also, if you're interested in the coaching, go to sixshootermarketing.com/coach.
Okay.
And that'll take you to our coaching information. That really is where I want to spend more of my time in 2021.
Right.
I'm still doing things for clients, but I get the most energy from coaching.
Yeah.
Like when I get to sit with a business owner like this, and I mean, this is different because we're doing a podcast, but when I get to sit in a room, we just talk about it. One of my biggest strengths is ideation. Right, taking what you're doing and saying, well, what if you added in this, right? Going back to our AO road trips back in the day, there's technology now that would change the way we do that.
Sure.
Right, we weren't doing a lot of things you could do now.
Right.
But leverage. I used to refer to this as like leverage marketing. Right, everything needs to be leveraging up on the next pendulum.
Right.
To where, this software tool may be really good, But it's only as good as the stuff pouring into it.
Yeah.
And it's only as good as the workflows you build into it.
Your commitment to use it, your commitment to keep it current, all of the stuff that's in there. Listen, man, I appreciate having you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I knew sitting down here we'd be the longest podcast that I've ever had. I just knew that was going to happen. We kind of talked about it before we sat down here. I said, normally these things run an hour and a half. We're up to 2, looks like 2:22 right now. But the great part about that is there's a lot of information that we poured into this podcast today, a lot of information you brought to the table. Your passion's obviously right at the forefront of what it is that you're doing. I'd made a post earlier today, or replied to a post earlier today, where it talked about, people focus on money, right? And my reply to that was a Bob Dylan quote that, and I'll probably butcher this, but it said something to the effect of, it said, "What money? As long as a man goes to work, and he does the things that he wants to do in between, or what's considered a success is what I would start with. A success is considered a man who wakes up in the morning, goes to bed at night, and has done all the things that he wanted to do in between those two things."
Yeah.
And that's Bob Dylan. You're not talking about a businessman as much as you're talking about a free spirit musician out there that really sees that in between. And again, sometimes if your focus is directly on money, you're probably missing the networking, the connections, the real priorities that truly drive your business in a trajectory of upward, as opposed to if you're chasing the next dollar every time, you're probably not focusing on the things that'll really build that and stabilize it as a foundation. So let Dallas reach back to you. If you come and ask him for help, let him open those doors up of the marketing information that he has and the experience that he's used over the years. Let him bring that to your business and help you be able to grow your business in a way that you probably never thought of. But also that networking ability that's out there with folks to reach out to people who've been there, done that, can also lend such incredible insight into unprecedented times. And who knows, I had on here at the end the 2021 predictions, but quite honestly, when I've sat and talked to people about 2021, my honest opinion on is at the end of 2021 or somewhere as we get towards that, it's going to be one of the biggest rebound years that we've probably ever seen.
Yeah.
But positioning yourself here at the beginning instead of feeling trapped out of 2020 is really critical for businesses.
You got to be ready for opportunity.
Yeah.
And you got to be willing to shift when you need to shift. And you mentioned the networking. I love connecting people.
Yes.
Right. If you tell me, hey, I wish I knew a guy that did XYZ. Mm-hmm. I love connecting you with my buddy that does XYZ.
Yeah.
Right. Like I love doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you just want to, chat and see what we can connect with, I'm happy to do that too.
Well, and I think it's understood also that you don't want to take on something that you may not be the expert at either.
Right.
Those networkings then give you an opportunity to drop that through.
That's a really good point too. So I will add this as my last little tidbit. Mm-hmm. For me, one of the things that I realized this year is that I would rather have 50% of $1 million than 100% of 100,000. Right. I've teamed up with a guy because I started down this path of working with these senior living communities.
Right.
And I'm a big believer that God puts people in front of you at times that are meant to be there. Met this guy in a Facebook group of other marketers. And again, I'm very active with these groups of other marketers because it's great to pick each other's brain. Yep. And he's in-house for a company that has like multiple senior living communities. And we hit it off very, very well. And he's really good at doing things that I don't like to do. Right. Like I hate building a website. Right. I hate a lot of that stuff on the back end. I hate doing. Yeah. He loves it. Yep. He doesn't have sales experience. I'm great at sales.
Right.
So we are now focusing on that niche together. Yeah. And it's great. So I would encourage you to, instead of waiting so you can afford to pay someone to do the things you don't want to do, if you're getting started, partner up with people.
Yeah.
I mean, do an even split. Like go in this together. Our goal is to build this up and sell it for $5 or $6 million within 10 years. Yep. And then, hey, maybe at the end of that time, we love each other and want to do something else together. Or, hey, good luck. Here's your money. Here's my money. Yep. Let's go.
Power of partnership.
But we have a unique situation in the senior living community because I've dealt with it from the family side. Mm-hmm. Like I helped my grandmother with the place she lived here in town that was really good. And my other grandparents are moving into one this week. Mm. And so I know what it's like for the customer side of that.
Right.
And he's very good at what he does digitally to get that in. So I'm really excited about that in 2021 as well. That's where I'm going to be focusing most of my done for you services. And then the coaching, I really want coaching to be what I spend the majority of my time on.
Awesome. Well, Dallas, man, I appreciate your time coming in today.
Too, buddy. Valuable
time spent with us. It's a great opportunity to be able to get that on air and share this with folks. And again, any questions, reach back to Dallas 6 Shooter Marketing, the number 6, 6shootermarketing.com. Plug you right into what you need to know and plug you right back into Dallas over here who can take care of you as you're moving through this. So again, we appreciate you joining us, sticking it out with us on the longest podcast that we've had. But again, so much information in here and so many gems in here. Really hope that it was a great value to you, whether you're a small business or whether you're just out in the market. There were things shared today that I think are going to be of value to really of anybody that's in here. So I appreciate you bringing that insight and that information to the podcast today. So thanks for coming in, brother. Have a great day.
You too.
We'll see y'all later.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.